Hey guys, tonight we are going to travel back in time, not to witness the grandeur of Rome, but to find out just how spectacularly you would fail as a Roman gladiator. Forget the oiled up heroes you see in movies, with their brooding glares and dramatic speeches. We're diving into the gritty, uncomfortable, and frankly, quite smelly reality of a life that was, for most, short, brutal, and anything but glorious. You're not the hero of the story, you're the commodity. And honestly, you probably wouldn't make it past the first week. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Your support truly means the world. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments what city you're listening from and what time it is for you. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into 2 nights' journey together. It all starts on a perfectly ordinary day, the kind of day that's so forgettable, you'd never think it would be your last one of freedom. The sun is warm on your back, the air smells of churned earth and the faint, sweet scent of sunbete. Maybe you're a farmer in Gaul, your hands calloused from the plow, or perhaps you're a tribal warrior from Germania, captured in a skirmish on the misty frontier. You could even be a fisherman from the coasts of Illyria, your skin permanently tasting of salt. It doesn't really matter who you were. What matters is what you are now. You don't see the legionaries coming until it's too late. It's not a grand battle, no heroic last stand. It's just efficient. The gleam of a helmet, the thud of sandals on the dirt path, the cold, impersonal grip on your arm. They're shouting in a language you barely understand Latin, the tongue of your new masters. It's a language of commands, sharp and devoid of warmth. You are bound, your wrists chafing against coarse rope that will soon be replaced by iron. Your world, once as wide as the horizon, has shrunk to the space between you and the soldier marching in front. You become part of a sad, shuffling procession, a human chain of misery snaking its way across the land. Days blur into a monotonous cycle of walking, dust, and a gnawing hunger in your belly. At night, you're chained together in a makeshift pen, sleeping on the cold ground under a sky full of unfamiliar stars. You look at the faces around you. They are a map of the Roman Empire's conquests. A weary Thracian with fierce eyes, a dark-haired Syrian who weeps silently at night, a hulking Briton whose pattern tattoos are fading under a layer of grime. You are all from different worlds, yet you now share the same grim destination. This is the first lesson you learn: your past is gone. Your name, your family, your skills as a farmer or a fighter, they are irrelevant. You are a mancipium, a piece of property acquired by your captor. This is a mainstream, well-understood part of Roman history. The vast majority of gladiators began their careers as prisoners of war or slaves. They were the human spoils of the empire's relentless expansion. But here's a little detail you might not think about. As you're marched along, you're given rations to keep you alive, but just barely. You're fed a lump of hard, almost rock-like bread given a sip of passe. It's a cheap, sour concoction of vinegar mixed with water. It's just enough to stave off dehydration. The weird, small irony is that this was the common drink for the very Roman soldiers who now guard you. It was a practical, cheap way to make questionable water safer to drink. For them, it's a daily staple. For you, it's the taste of your own subjugation. The journey ends at the gates of a city. It could be Rome itself, or a major provincial hub like Capua. The sheer noise is the first thing that hits you. A cacophony of vendors shouting, wheels clattering on stone, and thousands of conversations happening at once. The smells are overwhelming: baking bread, open sewers, exotic spices, and the unwashed press of humanity. You, who are used to the open sky and the smell of fields, feel dizzy and small. You're not taken to a palace or even a proper prison. You're herded into a dark, foul-smelling holding cell somewhere in the bowels of the city's slave market. And this is where the academic debate comes in. While most of you are prisoners of war, some men who would become gladiators were amity. I had glad criminals condemned to die by the sword in the arena. Others were octorati, free men who, due to overwhelming debt or a desperate desire for fame, voluntarily signed a contract to become a gladiator. Historians still argue about the precise percentages, how many were forced, how many were condemned, and how many chose this life. But, as you sit in the darkness, the cold stone seeping into your bones, that distinction feels purely academic. The iron shackle on your ankle is very, very real. The heavy wooden door slammed shut, plunging you into near total darkness. The only sound is the breathing of the other captured men around you. Your old life is over. Your new one hasn't even begun. You are simply waiting to be sold. The heavy door groans open, and a rectangle of blindingly bright, dusty light cuts through the darkness. You flinch, throwing a hand up to shield your eyes. After hours in the gloom, the Roman sun feels like a physical blow. A guard barks a command, prodding you with the butt of his spear. It's time. You and the other men are shoved out of the sullen into a crowded, chaotic courtyard. This is it, the slave market. You're paraded onto a low wooden platform, blinking in the daylight, feeling 1,000 eyes on you. The crowd is a blur of faces, merchants, wealthy citizens, and a few who look different. They carry themselves with an air of detached professionalism, their eyes scanning you not with curiosity, but with calculation. One of them steps forward, HES not a soldier or a senator, HES thick set, with hands that look both strong and soft, the hands of a man who does business, not labor. This is all honest Che, the gladiator trainer and owner. HES, here to shop. He walks along the light of men, his gaze sharpened, appraising. HES not looking at you as a person, HES inspecting livestock. When he gets to you, he grabs your chin, tilting your head from side to side. He pries your mouth open with his thumb and forefinger, checking your teeth for disease or rot. It's a profoundly humiliating moment. You've been reduced to the level of a horse or an ox being considered for purchase. His rough, calloused fingers prod your shoulders, squeeze your biceps, and press into your thighs, testing the quality of the muscle. He has you turned around, looking for scars, old injuries, any sign of a defect that might make you a poor investment. This is the central, unglamorous truth of your new life, a key historical fact: you are a commodity. The Laniste is the entrepreneur of this grim trade. He buys men like you, invests in their training and upkeep, and then rents or sells them to the organizers of the games for a handsome profit. He runs a school, the ludus, which is less a school and more a combination of a prison barracks and a high-intensity gym. His entire business model is built on your sweat and, ultimately, your life. He is a broker of violence, a merchant of death. And here's a fascinating little contradiction of Roman society. Despite his potential wealth and the crucial role he plays in providing the state with its most popular form of entertainment, the Laniste is considered infamies. This is a legal and social status of infamy, of disgrace. HES in the same social bucket as prostitutes, actors, and undertakers. The very Romans who cheer for his gladiators and pay him fortunes look down on him as a parasite, a man who profits from death and slavery. So the man who now owns every second of your future is himself a social outcast, albeit the powerful and wealthy one. He can never hold public office, and his testimony in court is worth less than a normal citizen's. HES trapped in his profession, just as you are. The Laniste seems satisfied with his inspection. He turns to the man who captured you and the haggling begins. It's a flurry of Latin, a language of numbers and terms you don't understand. But you can read the gestures, the hands thrown up in mock outrage at a low offer, the fingers splayed to indicate a price, the slow, deliberate nod of agreement. This is where historians still debate the details. What determined your price? Was it just your physical condition, your height, weight, and perceived strength, or did your origin play a part? Some scholars argue that certain anthracite were considered more valuable. A German was thought to have a natural berserker fury. A Thracian was seen as inherently weary and cunning. These stereotypes might have acted like brand names, fetching a higher price. Others argue it was far more practical, based on a cold calculation of how many fights you could likely survive. No one knows the exact formula, but at this moment, a number is being attached to your life. A value, in silver sesterces, is placed on your potential to entertain a crowd as you fight for survival. The deal is struck. A small bag of coins, heavy with promise for one man and doom for the other, exchanges hands. The Laniste assistant steps forward with a piece of chalk and scrawls a mark on your back. You are his now. Legally, you are no longer a person. You are a race. A thing. The transition is complete. You are herded off the platform with a few other purchased men. The Laniste leads the way, not back to a dark cell, but out into the bustling streets of the city. You walk behind him, a strange, silent procession. You pass food stalls, temples, and laughing children. For a fleeting, painful moment, you see normal life. It's a world that is right there, just an arm's reach away. But it's a world you can no longer touch. It's like being a ghost. Your gaze falls on the massive, foreboding stone walls ahead. A single, heavily reinforced gate is set into them. It's not a grand entrance. It's functional, severe, and intimidating. This is your new home, your prison, the ludus, and you are about to step inside. The heavy gate of the ludus creaks open, revealing a world contained within high, unforgiving walls. The first thing that hits you isn't a sight, but a smell. It's a thick, almost tangible mix of sweat, stale hay, iron rust, and something else. A faint, metallic tang that you don't recognize yet, but will soon come to know as the smell of dried blood. The gate clangs shut behind you, and the sound echoes with a chilling finality. The noise of the city outside is instantly muffled, replaced by the sounds of this self-contained universe, the rhythmic thud of a wooden sword hitting a post, the grunt of exertion, the sharp crack of a whip, and a low, constant murmur of men's voices. You are standing in a large, open courtyard, the ground compacted into hard-packed earth from the endless footfalls of training. At the center of the yard stands the palace, a thick wooden stake, about 6 feet tall, planted firmly in the ground, its garden chipped from countless practice strikes. Around the perimeter of the courtyard are long, low buildings. They are functional, not beautiful. One is clearly a cookhouse, with smoke curling from a chimney. Another looks like a stable, but the tools inside aren't for horses, they're for men. This is the armory, and then there are the barracks. Long, dark doorways let into what will be your living quarters. Your new owner, the Laniste, leads you and the other new arrivals to the center of the yard. The men already training stop what they're doing. They turn to look at you, their faces beaded with sweat, their expressions a mixture of curiosity, pity, and cold indifference. These are the veterans, the established hierarchy of this place. You see men of all shapes and sizes, their bodies honed into instruments of combat. Some are massively muscled, others are lean and weary. They are covered in a latticework of old scars, each one a story of a fight survived. They don't see you as a comrade. They see you as a future opponent, or worse, just another body to fill a slot in the games. This is your first visual experience of the ludus, the Gladiator training school. The historical reality is that these were privately owned, purpose-built facilities. The most famous one was the Ludus Magnus in Rome, located right next to the Colosseum, with an underground tunnel connecting the two. But ludi existed all over the empire, from the bustling port of Pompeii to the distant frontiers of Britain. They were a crucial part of the Roman entertainment machine, the factories that produced the fighters for the arena. The Laniste hands you over to a man with a whip coiled over his shoulder and a permanent scowl latched onto his face. This is the doctor, or more accurately, the lead trainer. Despite the title, HES, no gentle teacher, HES usually a retired gladiator himself. A man who survived long enough to earn his freedom and now earns a living by inflicting the same brutal regimen on a new generation. He knows every dirty trick, every shortcut to a kill, and every weakness a man can have. His job is to break you down and rebuild you into something that can fight. Here's a small, curious detail about life in the ludus security. Escapes were a constant concern. The Spartacus revolt, which started from a ludus in Capua, was a traumatic memory for the Roman elite. Because of this, security in these schools was intense. The walls were high and often topped with sharpened stakes. The gates were barred and guarded day and night. At night, you and the other gladiators, especially the new and untrusted ones, would be locked into your cells. You aren't just a student, here you are a prisoner. The entire facility is designed to keep you in until you are marched out to the arena. Now the debate among historians kicks in again. What was the atmosphere inside a ludus really like? Was it a testosterone-fueled cauldron of constant rivalry and violence, where men fought over scraps of food and dominance, as some movies portray, or was there a kind of grim professionalism, a sense of shared purpose among men facing the same fate? Some evidence points to a strange kind of brotherhood. Gladiators in the same ludus belonged to a familiar gladiatii. They trained together, ate together, and sometimes even formed burial societies to ensure their fallen comrades got a proper funeral. Graffiti from Pompeii shows gladiators boasting about their victories and their popularity with women, suggesting a certain swagger and camaraderie. But other sources describe the brutal discipline, the constant threat of the whip, and the ever-present knowledge that the man you share a meal with today could be the man you have to kill tomorrow. The truth is likely somewhere in the middle, a tense, complex environment of temporary alliances, professional respect, and the simmering, unavoidable reality of your deadly profession. For now, you know nothing of this. You just stand in the center of the yard, overwhelmed and intimidated. The doctor walks around you, his eyes as appraising as the law-ts were, but with a different purpose. He's not assessing your value in coin, he's assessing your potential for violence. He barks an order. You're stripped of your ragged, traveling clothes, which are little more than rags anyway. You're handed a simple loincloth, the subliger column. This will be your uniform for the foreseeable future. You're then shoved towards a trough of cold water to wash off the grime of your journey. As the cold water shocks your skin, you catch your reflection, stripped down, standing in this brutal ISD courtyard. You look like what you are, a raw material, waiting to be forged in the fire of the ludus. The breaking-in process is about to begin. The air in the barracks is thick and heavy. It's a cramped, long room lined with simple stone or wooden banks, each with just a thin straw mattress for comfort. There are no private spaces, no personal belongings, no semblance of the life you once knew. This is your new home, a cell you share with a dozen other men. As you find an empty bunk and sink onto it, the scratchy straw rustling beneath you, you begin to observe the silent, rigid structure of this place. No one explicitly tells you the rules, but you learn them quickly through observation, because the penalty for not learning is swift and painful. You learn that there is a strict hierarchy, an unspoken pecking order. At the top are the primus palace gladiators. These are the veterans, the champions of the school. They have the most wins, the most scars, and the most privileges. They get the better bunks, away from the drafts. They get the first and best portions of food at mealtimes. When they walk through the barracks, other men move out of their way. They are the kings of this tiny, violent kingdom. Their confidence is intimidating. They've stared death in the face and won repeatedly. You are at the absolute bottom of this ladder, a tyro, a novice. You are less than nothing. You keep your eyes down and your mouth shut. This is a core, well-documented aspect of the ludus system, the internal ranking. A gladiator's rank was determined by his experience and success. A tira was a raw recruit. After his first fight, if he survived, he would become a veteraness. From there, he could climb the ranks based on his number of victories. The Primus Palace was the top-ranked gladiator in the ludus, a position of immense respect within the school's walls. This system wasn't just for bragging rights, it was a management tool for the laniste. It fostered competition and gave men a ladder to climb, a reason to fight harder and train better, even within a system of total subjugation. Your first meal is a lesson in itself. The bell rings, and the men file out to the cookhouse. You're handed a rough pottery bowl filled with a thick, grayish porridge. It's warm and bland, but you're so hungry you devour it without a second thought. This is Saganay, the famous gladiator diet. You'll be eating a lot of it. As you eat, you notice the silent rules of the mess hall. You don't speak unless spoken to by a higher rank gladiator. You don't take more than your share. You finish every last scrap in your bowl, because waste is not an option. And here's a quirky little detail that modern science has revealed about that gladiator diet. For a long time, people assumed these elite athletes ate a high-protein, meat-heavy diet, like modern bodybuilders. But chemical analysis of bones found in a gladiator cemetery in Ephesus tells a different story. The tests revealed high levels of strontium, which is characteristic of a mostly vegetarian diet, rich in things like barley and beans. Your daily meal would have been a high carbohydrate, high calorie mush. So why the carbs? The theory is that it wasn't just about building muscle, it was about building a layer of subcutaneous fat. This layer of fat would protect underlying nerves and blood vessels from minor cuts and slashes in the arena. A superficial wound would look spectacular and bloody, pleasing the crowd, but wouldn't be debilitating. It was a practical, if unappetizing, form of built-in armor. They were also found to have consumed a drink made from plant ash, likely as a source of calcium to help their bones heal faster. You're not just being fed, you're being scientifically fattened up for the slaughter. The social dynamics are a minefield. You quickly learn who to avoid. There's the brooding giant who never speaks, just stares. There's the weary, nervous man who seems to see threats in every shadow. And there's the veteran with a cruel streak, who enjoys tormenting the new arrivals with petty acts of intimidation. Making a friend is a dangerous proposition. Any bond you form is temporary by nature. The man you share a quiet moment with could be ordered to kill you in a few months. Yet, small alliances do form. Men from the same tribe or province might stick together, speaking in their native tongue when the guards aren't near. A shared glance of understanding, a quiet nod of solidarity, these are the small currencies of survival. This leads to another one of those historical debates. Did gladiators from the same school ever refuse to fight each other to the death? The Roman moralist Seneca, the younger, wrote about a German prisoner of war who, on the morning he was to fight, killed himself rather than perform for the crowd. There are other, less reliable accounts of gladiators killing each other in the barracks before a match to avoid being forced to fight a friend. But for the most part, the system was designed to prevent this. Pairings were often made between different schools, or the laniste would ensure that men who had formed a bond were not pitted against each other, as it was bad for morale and business. But the question of how much personal agency and loyalty existed in this brutal environment is something historians continue to piece together from fragmented evidence. Did a shared sense of humanity sometimes override the kill or be killed imperative? It's a comforting thought, but likely a rare exception to the rule. As night falls, Yuri locked back in your cell. The air grows cold. The only light comes from a single torch flickering in the hallway, casting long, dancing shadows. The sounds are different now. Not the clang of steel, but the sounds of men in their restless sleep. Someone coughs, another groans. One man sobs quietly in the darkness. A heartbreaking familiar sound you remember from the journey here. You lie on your straw mattress, the strange food heavy in your stomach. You stare up at the stone ceiling and realize the full weight of your situation. You are in a place where your life has a price, your body is an investment, and your only path forward is through violence. The rules of your old world are gone. You have to learn the new ones, or you won't live to see another sunrise. The morning after your first night in the ludus begins before the sun has even risen. You are woken by the harsh clang of a bell, a sound that will become the rhythm of your new life. There's no time for slow waking. Yuri herded out of the barracks into the pre-dawn chill. The air is cold enough to see your breath. This is when the formal indoctrination begins. Today, you will cease to be the person you were and officially become a gladiator. Today, you take the oath. You and the other new arrivals are lined up in the center of the courtyard. Facing the lawn is Tay and his lead trainer. The doctor, the veteran gladiators stand around the perimeter, watching. Their presence is part of the ceremony, a silent reminder of what you are striving to become. The lawnist Tay holds up a hand for silence. He doesn't shout. His voice is calm, businesslike. He explains the terms of your new existence. He owns you, your body, your life. It all belongs to him. He will feed you, clothe you, and train you. In return, you will fight when and where you are told. If you fight well and survive, you might one day earn fame and even your freedom. If you disobey, if you run, if you show cowardice, you will be punished severely. There is no ambiguity. The contract is simple and absolute. Then comes the moment of commitment. The doctor steps forward, holding a tablet. He begins to recite the words of the Sacramentum Gladiatum, the gladiator's oath. He says the words, and you are made to repeat them, line by line. The Latin is formal, archaic, and terrifying. Yari, vincior I, verbere or I, ferocu nec ari. The words echo in the cold morning air, spoken by a dozen terrified men in a clumsy, fearful chorus. I will endure to be burned, to be bound, to be beaten, and to be killed by the sword. This oath is one of the most famous and well-documented aspects of a gladiator's life. It's mentioned by several Roman writers, including Petronius. By reciting it, you are legally and ritually surrendering your body and your rights. You are agreeing to the terms of your own potential death for a free man who signed on voluntarily. In Archaeological, this oath was a legally binding contract, turning him into a quasi-slave for the duration of his term. For you, a captured slave, it's less a contract and more a formal statement of your utter powerlessness. You are acknowledging the reality of your situation. You no longer have control over your own survival. Your life is forfeit, and your only duty is to obey. And here's a bizarre, almost absurd detail associated with this process. Once you've taken the oath, you are given a new name. Your old name, the one your mother gave you, the one that tied you to your family and your home is stripped away. You are now given a plug-in AX, a fighting name. These names were often aggressive, intimidating, or sometimes even mythological. You might be called Ferox Fierce, Ursus Bear, or Achilles. It's a classic psychological tool. It severs the final link to your past identity and reinforces your new role as a performer and a fighter. It's branding. Yorlan Estay is not just creating a warrior, HES creating a character, a persona that the crowds can recognize and cheer for, or against. You've become a stage name, a product to be marketed. After the oath, the lawn Estay leaves. Your life is now in the hands of the doctor. The real work begins immediately. You are introduced to the palace, the training post you saw when you first arrived. This unassuming wooden stake will become your most constant companion, your most unforgiving opponent, and your most important teacher. You are handed your first pieces of training equipment: a rudius, a blunt wooden sword, and a scutum, a heavy wicker shield. The weight of the shield surprises you. It's far heavier than you expected, made of layered wooden wicker, designed to mimic the weight and unwieldiness of a real legionary-style shield. The wooden sword feels clumsy and dead in your hand. The doctor demonstrates the basic stances and movements, the way you hold the shield, how you keep your body protected. The fundamental footwork, it's all about defense first. Survival is the foundation of everything you will learn. And this is where we run into a common misconception and a subject of ongoing historical discussion. Popular culture often imagines gladiator training as a constant, bloody free-for-all, with men fighting each other to the death in the yard. This is almost certainly wrong. You are a valuable investment. The honeste is not going to risk his expensive property being damaged or killed in training. The vast majority of your training will be non-lethal. You will spend countless hours, day after day, striking the palace. You will practice footwork until your legs burn. You will engage in sparring sessions with other novices using blunt wooden weapons. The debate among historians centers on the intensity and frequency of armed sparring. How often did gladiators train with real, albeit blunted, metal weapons? Some sources suggest that this was reserved for the most experienced gladiators, preparing for a specific match. Others believe it was a more regular part of the regimen, to get used to the feel and balance of actual steel. The truth probably varied from one ludus to another, depending on the philosophy of the honeste and the doctor. But for you, a Tyrol, steel is a distant dream. You will be stuck with wood for a very long time. You spend the rest of the day in a state of exhausted confusion. Your muscles, unaccustomed to these specific movements, scream in protest. The heavy shield feels like an anchor, pulling at your arm. Your strikes against the palace are clumsy and weak. The doctor and his assistants, other veteran gladiators, circle like sharks, correcting your form with a sharp word or a stinging rap from a wooden rod. By the time the evening bell rings, your body is a landscape of new aches and pains. You stumble back to the barracks, every muscle trembling with fatigue. You've taken the oath. You've been given a new name. You've begun your training. You've officially died to your old world and been reborn into this one. Days bleed into weeks, and the initial shock of your new life hardens into a dull, monotonous routine. You wake to the bell. You train. You eat your barley mush. You fall into an exhausted sleep, and you repeat. In this constrained world, the other men are no longer just intimidating figures or shadowy threats. They become the fixed points of your universe. You start to learn their names, their fighting names. That isn't the stories that are whispered about them in the quiet moments. You get to know them not through conversation, but through shared experience. There's CRXS, the Gaul. HE is massive, a mountain of muscle, but moves with surprising speed. He was one of the leaders in a tribal uprising and was captured after a brutal battle. He carries a quiet dignity, and the other Gauls in the ludus look to him as an unofficial leader. He rarely smiles, but when he does, it briefly transforms his scarred face. Then there's Spartacus, HES a Thracian, lean and fierce, with an intelligence in his eyes that seems out of place here. The veterans say he was once an auxiliary in the Roman army before he deserted, or was accused of it. HES a natural with the sword, and even the doctor seems to watch him with a grudging respect. You keep your distance from him, not out of fear, but out of an instinct that he is a fire that will either forge something new or burn this whole place to the ground. The presence of men like Spartacus and CRXS in a ludus in Capua around 73 BC is, of course, a major historical fact. The Third Civil War, the massive slave revolt they would go on to lead, is the most famous gladiator story of all time. It started in a ludus just like this one, with men just like your new colleagues. Your experience, your daily life, is the prelude to one of Rome's greatest crises. You are living in the tinderbox, right before the spark. As you train alongside these men, you learn their fighting styles, their tales, their strengths, and their weaknesses. You start to recognize the different types of gladiators, the established classes that you will one day be forced into. You see the Emperor with his big, legionary-style shield and short sword, his helmet adorned with a fish crest. He often spars against the THRAX, the Thracian, who carries a small square shield and a curved sword. The Sika, designed to slash around an opponent's defenses, where he might face the Hoplo Marcus, who fights with a spear and a small, round shield, like a Greek hoplite. And here's a weird little piece of Gladiator lore: the Restorative, or the Netman. This guy is the odd one out. He fights with almost no armor, just a loincloth and a metal guard on his shoulder called a Galorus. His weapon's a weighted net, a three-pronged trident, and a small dagger. His style is completely different. HES all about speed, agility, and trapping his heavily armored opponent. The Restorative was often looked down upon by some Romans as being effeminate because of his lack of armor and his evasive style. He was seen as a tricky fisherman, not a true, masculine warrior. Yet, archaeological evidence from graffiti and tombstones shows that some Restorative became massive stars, celebrated for their skill and athleticism. It's a strange contradiction of fighter class that was simultaneously scorned and celebrated. You find your own small circle. It's not about friendship. Not really. It's about survival. You gravitate towards a quiet Briton named Albinus, captured in the far north. HES as lost and overwhelmed as you are. You don't talk much, but you stand together during meals. You watch each other's backs for the casual cruelties of the senior gladiators. You start to learn a pidge, in language of the barracks, a mix of broken Latin, Greek, and words from a dozen other tongues. A nod, a grunt, a shared look. It's how you communicate. This brings up a persistent historical debate: what was the level of solidarity among gladiators? The traditional view, fueled by the Spartacus revolt, suggests a strong potential for a shared class consciousness, a brotherhood of the oppressed ready to unite against their masters. They shared the same miserable conditions, the same diet, the same brutal training, and the same fate. This created a powerful common ground. However, other historians push back against this romantic notion. They argue that the Lanista system was designed specifically to prevent solidarity. The ranking system, the promise of individual fame and fortune, and the practice of pitting different gladiator types against each other were all meant to foster rivalry, not unity. AMUR, Milo and the Restorative were natural enemies, trained in styles meant to counter each other. Why would they feel brotherhood? The truth is likely complex. Perhaps solidarity existed within ethnic groups, or among men of the same rank, that it was a fragile thing, easily broken by the pressures of the system. For now, you don't think in such grand terms. Your world is the dust of the training yard and the straw of your bunk. You watch CRXs effortlessly swing a heavy practice sword that you can barely lift. You see Spartacus practice his footwork, a dance of deadly precision. You listen to the older gladiators tell stories of the great arenas in Rome, of fighters whose names are still chanted by the crowds years after their deaths. These men, your roommates, are a living library of the violence that awaits you. Their cautionary tales, sources of inspiration, and potential future opponents. You are all part of the same familia gladiator, the gladiator family. But you know, deep down, that this is a family that devours its own. Your body is changing. The aches and pains of the first few weeks have been replaced by a deep, resonant strength in your muscles. The soft flesh you might have had from a previous life is gone, baked off by the relentless sun and grueling training. It's being replaced by hard, functional muscle, and the fuel for this transformation is the food. Specifically, the infamous SAG and A Gladiator, the Gladiator's fattening feed. Every day, it's the same. A bell rings for the midday meal, and you line up, wooden bowl in hand. Yuri served a generous portion of a thick, heavy porridge. It's primarily made of barley, but sometimes it's mixed with beans, oats, or whatever cheap grain is available. It's bland, monotonous, and relentlessly filling. You sit down, not for pleasure, but because you know you need the energy for the afternoon's training session. You learn to eat it quickly, without thinking about the taste. It is fuel, Nothing more. This diet is a well-established historical fact, confirmed by both ancient texts and modern science. The Roman writer Pliny the Elder referred to gladiators as horderii, or barley men. It was their defining characteristic. For a long time, this was seen as a sign of their low status. They were fed the cheapest, caressed grain available, food fit for livestock. But as you experience the effects, you realize there's a deliberate science to it. The high carbohydrate, high calorie diet is exceptionally effective at building bulk. You feel it in your own body. You're getting bigger, stronger, and you have a surprising amount of stamina during the long, repetitive drills. Alongside the barley mush, you get your ration of the sour vinegar water, the passe, but after a particularly grueling session, or as a supposed health tonic, you're sometimes given something else. It's a strange, gritty, and unpleasant drink. It tastes faintly of ash. This is the secret ingredient to the Gladiator regimen, a supplement that reveals the strange sophistication behind this brutal system. This ashy-tasting drink is a calcium supplement. Modern analysis of gladiator bones from the cemetery at Ephesus showed they had extremely high bone density and evidence of well-healed fractures. The theory is that they were regularly consuming a drink made from burnt plant or bone ash, which is a rich source of calcium. In a profession where broken bones were a constant risk, this was a deliberate strategy to strengthen their skeletons and help them recover faster from injuries. It's a bizarrely modern-sounding approach to sports medicine, happening too, Zorro years ago. You're essentially drinking a primitive recovery shake. Life revolves around this food. The quality and quantity of your portion is a direct reflection of your status in the ludus. As a Tyrol, a novice, you get the standard scoop, but you see the champions, the primi poli, getting extra portions, maybe with a few vegetables or a chunk of hard cheese thrown in. Meat is exceptionally rare. It's reserved as a reward for a significant achievement or for the days leading up to a fight in the arena, a special treat to boost strength and morale. You dream of meat. The memory of a simple roasted bird from your old life can feel like an impossible luxury. This monotonous, carb-heavy diet leads to one of those debates among historians and nutritionists. Was this diet actually healthy on one hand? It was effective for its purpose, creating big, strong fighters with a protective layer of fat. The calcium supplements were clearly beneficial for bone health, but on the other hand, it was incredibly unbalanced. A diet so heavily reliant on a single grain would have led to deficiencies in certain vitamins and minerals. Some scholars suggest that gladiators may have suffered from chronic digestive issues and other health problems related to this poor nutrition. They were being built for short-term performance, not long-term health. The Laniste wasn't investing in your retirement plan. He was investing in your next fight. Your body was being optimized for the arena, at the potential cost of your overall well-being. It's a chillingly practical calculation. You learn to read the subtle language of the kitchen. A slightly thicker porridge means the grain delivery was good. A watery gruel means supplies are running low. The appearance of dried figs or dates in the mix is a sign of a festival or a coming game. A small boost to morale. You become attuned to these tiny variations in a world of overwhelming sameness. You also learn that food is power. A veteran might tax a small portion from a novice's bowl as a show of dominance. Stealing food is one of the gravest sins you can commit in the ludus, punishable by a severe whipping. Food is survival, and the rules around it are absolute. As you scrape the last of the thick porridge from your bowl, you feel the familiar, heavy fullness in your stomach. It's not a pleasant feeling, but it's a necessary one. You look across the mess hall at the other men, all engaged in the same mindless, essential task of fueling their bodies. You are all barley men now. Your bodies are no longer your own, they are projects, managed and manipulated by the Laniste. You are being sculpted, pound by pound, mouthful by mouthful. into a shape that is suitable for the sand of the arena. And with every bland, starchy bite, you are moving one step further from the person you used to be. The sun has barely climbed over the high walls of the ludus, but the training yard is already a hive of activity. This is where you spend most of your waking hours, the center of your world, the focus of all your energy. Is the palace, the post. It is your first and most important teacher. It never tires, it never complains, and it never makes a mistake. It is simply there, a silent judge of your progress. You are handed your standard training gear, the wicker shield, the scudum, which now feels like a natural extension of your arm, and the wooden sword, the rudius. The routine is burned into your mind and muscles. You approach the palace as if it were a real opponent. You circle it, your feet moving in the shuffling. Balanced steps the doctor has drilled into you. Your shield is up, protecting your torso and head. Your sword arm is held back, ready to strike. The doctor's voice is a constant presence, barking corrections. Keep your shield higher. Don't expose your leg. Test your footwork. Then, you begin the endless, repetitive drill of striking. Thwack, thwack, thwack. The sound of your wooden sword hitting the wooden post becomes the soundtrack to your life. You are not just wildly hacking at it. Every strike is deliberate. You are taught the specific targets owns on a human body: the neck, the arms, the legs. You practice thrusts, aiming for the gut. You practice slashes, aiming for the limbs. This is the core of your training, a historical fact well documented by Roman writers like Gladiator, who described Roman legionary training in similar terms. Gladiators, like soldiers, built their fundamental skills through relentless practice against a stationary target. It built muscle memory, turning complex actions into pure instinct. The sheer monotony is a mental battle in itself. Hours are spent on this simple task. Your muscles burn, sweat drips into your eyes, and your mind screams for a distraction. But you learn to push through it. You learn to focus on the small details: the angle of your blade, the snap of your wrist, the way your weight shifts from one foot to the other. This is the discipline of the ludus. It's about breaking down combat into its smallest components and mastering each one through sheer repetition. But here's a small, curious detail about your training weapons. Your rudius isn't just a simple wooden stick. It's often made of heavy, dense wooden that is sometimes deliberately weighted to be heavier than a real sword. The same goes for your wicker shield. The logic is simple and brutal if you can train for hours with overweight equipment. A real, properly balanced gladius will feel as light as a feather in your hand when the time comes. It's resistance training, ancient Roman style. The goal is to make the real fight feel easier than the practice. You are constantly training in hard mode so that the game itself feels manageable. After hours at the palace, the training shifts. You are paired with another Tyrrell, another novice. Now, you practice the same drills, but against a moving target. This is not a duel. It's a cooperative exercise. You practice your strikes, and your partner practices his blocks. You take turns being the aggressor and the defender. The movements are slow, deliberate, and controlled. The trainer is always watching, ready to lash out with a wooden rod if you get sloppy, or if a flash of real aggression shows through. The goal here is not to win, but to learn. This is where a historical debate often arises: how much of gladiator combat was real. Some revisionist historians have suggested that perhaps some gladiatorial fights were more like choreographed spectacles, akin to modern professional wrestling, with predetermined outcomes. They point to the high cost of gladiators and the evidence of well-healed wounds as proof that Lonnie Stay wouldn't want their investment skilled off too readily. However, the vast majority of mainstream historians reject this view. The evidence from tombstones listing a gladiator's exact number of fights and their cause of death, a legal framework of the games, and the sheer volume of contemporary accounts describing the brutal reality of the contests all point to one conclusion: the fights were real, and the danger of death was ever present. Your training is not for a performance, it's for a genuine life or death struggle. The choreography is in the footwork and the basic moves, not in the outcome. As you progress, the training becomes more complex. You learn to integrate your shield as a weapon, using the heavy central boss to punch and create openings. You learn to use your body weight to push and shove your opponent off balance. You drill, then you drill, and you drill. By the end of the day, you are physically and mentally drained. Your hands are raw, with splinters from the wooden sword. Your shield arm feels like lead. You stumble back to the barracks, every part of your body humming with exhaustion. You fall onto your straw mattress, and even in your sleep, your muscles twitch, replaying the endless motions. You dream of the palace. You see it in your mind's eye, scarred and unmoving. It is the symbol of your existence. You are being shaped, hammered into a weapon, one whack at a time. The wooden wicker in your hands are just the beginning. You know, with a cold certainty, that one day they will be replaced by cold, sharp steel. Discipline in the ludus is not a concept, it's a physical presence. It hangs in the air, as real as the dust in the training yard. And the instrument of that discipline is the whip. You learn its sound before you ever feel its sting. It's a sharp, wicked crack that slices through the air, a sound that makes every man in the vicinity flinch, whether he is the target or not. The whip is wielded by the Dr. S and their assistants, the veteran gladiators who serve as enforcers. It is their primary tool of communication. You learn the infractions that earn its attention. Dropping your shield during a drill, a moment of laziness or inattention, speaking out of turn, showing fear or hesitation. The reasons are legion, and the punishment is immediate and public. You see a fellow Tiro, a clumsy Iberian boy, stumble during a footwork exercise. Before he can even recover his balance, the trainer's whip lashes out, leaving a bright red welt on his back. The boy cries out, a sharp yelp of pain, but he scrambles back into position. There is no sympathy. The lesson is for everyone the standard is perfection, and the price of failure is pain. This brutal form of discipline is a core historical aspect of the ludus. Roman society was built on a foundation of harsh discipline, from the paterfamilias's absolute power over his household to the centurion's use of the vine staff on his legionaries. The ludus was an extreme microcosm of this. The laniste held the power of life and death over you, and his trainers were authorized to use any means necessary to enforce their will. The whip, the sagrum, was a constant reminder of your status as property. It was a tool to break your spirit of resistance and remold you into an obedient, effective killing machine. You live in a state of constant, low-level fear, not just the grand, existential fear of the arena, but the immediate, sharp fear of the whip. It keeps you focused. It pushes you past the point of exhaustion. When your muscles are screaming, and you feel like you can't lift your shield one more time, the sight of a trainer walking by, casually swinging his whip, gives you a new surge of adrenaline. Fear becomes a fuel, just like the barley porridge. Here's a small, grim detail about the tools of punishment. The whip wasn't the only instrument of pain. For more serious offenses, like fighting in the barracks or showing outright defiance, the punishments were more severe. You might be flogged, put on reduced rations, or subjected to shackling in a painful position for hours. In the most extreme cases, for things like attempting to escape, the laniste had the right to execute you on the spot. But there was another, stranger form of punishment: humiliation. A disobedient gladiator might be forced to wear a sign detailing his offense, or perform menial, degrading chores in front of his peers. The goal was to destroy not just his body, but his pride. In a world where a fighter's reputation and mana were part of his persona, public humiliation could be a punishment more cutting than the whip itself. Your first direct experience with the whip is for something minor. During a sparring session, your attention wanders for a split second. You find yourself glancing at the gate, thinking of the world outside. In that moment, Your partner's wooden sword thuds against your unprotected side. It doesn't hurt, but you reopen. Immediately, you feel a searing, white-hot line of pain across your shoulders. The whip, it's so fast you don't even see it coming. The pain is shocking, intense, and utterly consuming. It erases every thought from your mind except for the fire on your skin. You gasp, stumbling forward. The doctor's voice is low and cold in your ear. In the arena, you'd be dead. Your mind is your weapon. Do not let it wander. The lesson is burned into you. Literally, from that day on, your focus during training is absolute. You learn to shut out everything else. The past, the future, the birds flying overhead, it all disappears. There's only the here and now. The feel of the wicker shield, the weight of the wooden sword, the movements of your opponent. This intense, first meaningful sense is a surprisingly effective psychological conditioning. This leads to a historical question that scholars still ponder: did this brutalization work, or did it breed resentment that ultimately backfired? The Spartacus revolt is the ultimate argument for the backfire theory. The constant beatings and dehumanization in the ludus of Capua didn't create obedient fighters, it created a core of enraged rebels who united and tore a bloody path through Italy. The very tools meant to control the gladiators became the motivation for their rebellion. However, for every one Spartacus, there were thousands of other gladiators who seemingly accepted their fate and fought as they were told. For many, the system of discipline, while brutal, may have been accepted as a necessary evil of their profession. They might have seen it as a way of weeding out the weak and ensuring that the men they fought alongside in team events were competent and reliable. Was the whip to love control or a catalyst for rebellion? The answer is likely both. It depended entirely on the man holding it, the man feeling its sting, and the specific circumstances of the moment. That night, you lie on your bunk, the welt on your back throbbing with a dull, persistent pain. It's a physical reminder of your place in this world. You are not a student to be nurtured, you are an animal to be trained. The whip is the master's hand, guiding you, correcting you, and reminding you that your life is not your own. You touch the raised line of skin gingerly. It's your first scar from the ludus, but you know, with a grim certainty, it will not be your last. After weeks of grueling, repetitive basics, a change comes to your routine. The doctor pulls you and a few other promising Tier 1s aside. The time has come for you to be categorized. You will no longer be just a generic trainee. You will be molded into a specific type of gladiator. This decision is not yours to make. It will be based on your body type, your natural aptitudes, and, most importantly, the needs of the lawnist as inventory. The doctor and the lawnist take watch as you're put through a new series of drills. They test your speed, your strength, your stamina, and your reaction time. Are you quick and agile? Or are you a powerhouse of brute force? Are you tall and rangy? Or short and stocky? They observe you sparring, looking for tells. Do you favor aggressive, forward-moving attacks? Or are you more comfortable with a defensive, counter-attacking style? It's like being judged for a team. But the sport is death, and you don't get to choose your position. Based on their assessment, you are assigned a fighting style. Let's say, given your build not the biggest, but solid and with good endurance, you are designated to be a THRAX, a Thracian-style fighter. The name has little to do with you actually being from Thrace. It's a category, a brand. This moment is a critical turning point. From now on, your training will become highly specialized. This specialization is a fundamental, historically documented aspect of gladiatorial combat. The games were not a chaotic brawl between two similarly armed men. They were a carefully curated spectacle of contrasting styles. The Roman audience loved the matchup of opposites, the Parmide versus the Escadere small shield versus large shield, the lightly armored speedster versus the heavily armored tank. This created tactical diversity and made the fights more interesting to watch. The main types were well established: the Murmillo, the Thrax, the Hoplomachus, and the strange Radiarius. Among others, your career and your chances of survival are now tied to how well you can master your assigned role. You are taken to the armory, the armamentomy, to receive your new equipment. The armory is a dark, fascinating place that smells of leather, oil, and cold iron. Real weapons hang on the walls: gleaming swords, sharp tridents, and menacing-looking helmets. For now, you are still given training versions, but they are replicas of the real thing. As a Thrax, you are given your signature gear. First, the shield. It's a small, square, rectangular shield called a parmula. It's light and maneuverable, a stark contrast to the heavy, coffin-lid scudam you've been training with. It offers less protection, meaning you'll need to rely on agility and footwork. Then, you are given the most important tool of your new trade, the Sika. It's a short, curved sword with a wicked, forward-angled blade. It feels strange and unbalanced in your hand after the straight would unrudy us. The doctor demonstrates its purpose. It's not a hacking weapon. It's designed to get around the edge of a larger shield, to hook and slash at an opponent's unprotected back or legs. It's a weapon of cunning, not brute force. And here's a peculiar detail about Gladiator equipment: the armor. You might think more armor is always better, but it was all about balance. As a Thrax, you get a distinctive helmet with a wide brim and a crest, often topped with a griffin head. You also get padded quilting fasciae wrapped around your sword arm and two high greaves OC-RE that protect your legs up to the thigh. But your chest is completely bare. Why, it's all part of the spectacle and the balance. Your opponent, likely a Murmillo, will have a massive shield to protect his body, but might have less leg protection. Your bare chest is a tantalizing target, but your well-protected legs allow you to be more aggressive with your footwork. Every piece of equipment is part of a complex equation of risk and opportunity. It's a uniform designed for a specific, deadly dance. Your training now changes dramatically. You no longer practice generic strikes against the palace. You practice the specific moves of a Thrax. You learn how to use the small shield to deflect and parry, rather than just absorb blows. You drill the curving slashes of the Sika over and over again, learning to flick your wrist to get the angle just right. You are now almost exclusively paired to spar against trainees assigned to be Murmillons or Hoplomachai, your natural opponents in the arena. You learn to read their movements, to spot the openings created by their large shields, and to avoid their powerful, direct attacks. This intense specialization raises an interesting question that historians still debate: how much choice did a gladiator have in their fighting style? The conventional view is zero. It was a business decision made by the l'honnêteté. However, some scholars suggest that a particularly talented or successful gladiator might have had some influence. If the fighter showed a remarkable, natural aptitude for a certain style, even if it wasn't what he was initially assigned, a smart l'honnêteté might nurture that talent. Furthermore, if a veteran gladiator survived long enough, he might be allowed or even encouraged to train in a secondary style to make him a more versatile and valuable commodity. But for a hero like you, there is no choice. You are a Thrax. That is your identity now. You feel a strange mix of pride and fear. Having a specialization gives you a sense of identity within the ludus. You are no longer just a nameless novice, you are a Thracian. The other Thrax trainees become your immediate peer group. You share tips. You compete with each other. You watch each other's form. But with this new identity comes a chilling realization. Your path is now set. The man you are training to fight is no longer a generic opponent. He has a name, a style, and a set of equipment. You are being prepared for a specific kind of duel. The abstract horror of the arena is becoming a concrete, tactical problem, and you know that mastering your new role is the only thing that might keep you alive. One sweltering afternoon, During a particularly intense sparring session, it happens. You misjudge the speed of your opponent's attack. You try to parry with your Sika, but you're too slow. The heavy wooden raining sword of the MUR trainee slides past your blade and smashes into your forearm. A sickening crack echoes in the yard, followed by a surge of white-hot, nauseating pain. You cry out and drop your sword, cradling your arm. It's broken. The training stops. The doctor is at your side in an instant, his expression not one of sympathy, but of cold, professional assessment. He prods the rapidly swelling area, his rough fingers sending fresh waves of agony through you. He confirms the break with a curt nod. You're terrified. In your old life, an injury like this could be a death sentence, leading to a crippled limb or a fatal infection. Here, in the ludus, what does it mean? Are you now useless? Will they just let you die? You are half dragged, half carried away from the training yard and into a small, dark room you've never seen before. This is the closest thing the ludus has to an infirmary. It smells of dried herbs, vinegar, and stale sweat. This is the domain of the school's medicus. This medical care is a crucial, if grim, part of the business model. You are a valuable investment, and the Laniste is not going to let his property be ruined by a treatable injury. The medical attention you receive is not for your comfort. It's about getting you back on your feet and into fighting shape as quickly as possible. It is, essentially, asset management. Roman medicine, for its time, was surprisingly advanced, particularly in the fields of surgery and trauma care. Army surgeons, who had to deal with horrific wounds on the battlefield, were highly skilled. Many of the doctors who worked for ludus were likely retired army medics or had trained in similar techniques. They knew how to set bones, stitch wounds, and, most importantly, prevent infection. The medicus works quickly and without anesthetic. Another man holds you down as the doctor expertly manipulates your arm to set the bone. The pain is blinding, and you scream until your throat is raw. Once the bone is aligned, he applies a poultice of herbs, some with antiseptic properties, and then immobilizes your arm with tightly wrapped linen bandages and a pair of simple wooden splints. The work is rough but efficient. You are then given a cup of a bitter, foul-tasting brew, likely containing poppy extract or other sedatives, to dull the pain and help you sleep. And here's a fascinatedly morbid detail about gladiator medicine. They were pioneers in sports medicine, especially physical therapy. Your recovery will be managed with the same rigor as your training. You won't be allowed to just lie in your bunk and waste away. As soon as the initial healing phase is over, you'll be put on a strict regimen of exercises designed to maintain your cardiovascular fitness and the strength in the rest of your body. You'll do endless leg exercises, practice footwork, and perhaps even light, one-handed drills. The goal is to minimize muscle atrophy and ensure that when your arm is healed, you haven't lost your core conditioning. It's a holistic approach born of pure economic necessity. This raises a historical debate about the quality of life and the overall health of gladiators. One side argues that, ironically, gladiators may have received better medical care than the average Roman citizen. The urban poor in Rome had little to no access to skilled doctors. If they broke a bone, it would likely heal poorly. If at all, the gladiator, as a valuable commodity, had access to a professional medicus who specialized in trauma. The skeletal remains from the Ephesus gladiator cemetery show numerous severe injuries that had been successfully healed, evidence of sophisticated medical intervention. But the other side of the argument is that this care was just patching them up to be sent back into the meat grinder. They were allowed to heal from one wound, just so they could go and receive another, potentially fatal one. Was it health care, or was it just high-level maintenance on a piece of equipment? The philosophical line is blurry and deeply unsettling. For the next few weeks, you are in a strange limbo. You are exempt from the main training. A spectator in your own life, you watch the other men drill in the hot sun. their bodies glistening with sweat. You feel a bizarre mix of relief and anxiety. Relief from the daily grind and the risk of new injuries, but anxiety that you are falling behind. You see other TIR1s improving, their movements becoming sharper and more confident, while you are stuck on the sidelines. Your arm heals, but it's a slow, painful process. The medicus checks on it regularly, changing the dressings and prescribing foul-tasting herbal remedies. You learn the rhythm of recovery. You do your prescribed exercises until your legs ache. You watch. You wait. The scar that forms on your arm is a testament not just to the injury, but to the system that fixed it. It's a mark of your value. You were worth saving. You were worth the expense of the doctor's time and the cost of the herbs. You are a good investment. And as you finally, gingerly, pick up a wooden sword again, you know that the Lawniste will be expecting a return on that investment. As your arm fully heals and you rejoin the relentless rhythm of training, you start to see the ludus not just as a prison, but as a business. You begin to understand the cold, hard economics that govern every aspect of your life. It's a dawning realization that you are not just a fighter, you are a line item on a ledger. A capital asset in the Lawniste portfolio of violence. Your owner, the Lawniste, is not just a trainer. He is a promoter, an agent, and a speculator. You see him in the courtyard, not watching the training with the trainer's eye, but with the detached gaze of an investor reviewing his stock. He's calculating. He's assessing which of his men are prime assets, ready for the high-stakes games in a major city, and which are B-list fighters suitable for a smaller, provincial show. This commodification is the absolute core of your existence. The entire system is built on the buying and selling of human lives for entertainment. You learn the language of the business through snippets of conversation overheard between the Lawniste and a visiting editor, the sponsor of an upcoming game. They don't talk about bravery or honor. They talk about prices, contracts, and crowd appeal. A top-ranked gladiator, a star with a following, could be leased for a single event for a fortune. The Lawniste gets a huge fee, but he also takes a huge risk. If his star fighter is killed, he loses his valuable asset. The contract often included a clause stipulating a massive additional payment if the gladiator was killed, a kind of life insurance policy for the Lawniste. And here's a quirky, almost modern-sounding detail of the gladiator business marketing and branding. You realize that the fighting names, the specialized armor, the griffin crest on your helmet, it's all part of a calculated marketing strategy. The Lawniste is creating distinct, recognizable brands that the public can get behind. Graffiti from Pompeiacs, like ancient social media, with fans scrawling messages of support for their favorite fighters. Salatus the Thracian, Isai of the Girls, Cressius the Nutman, Master of the Girls. You are being packaged and sold to a target audience. Before a big game, programs would be published, listing the pairings, your fighting name, your type, then maybe even your win-loss record would be advertised. You're becoming a minor celebrity, but a celebrity with no rights and no share in the profits. You start to understand the immense costs involved. The Lawniste has to pay for the initial purchase of slaves like you. He has to feed his entire familia gladiati dozens, sometimes hundreds of men every single day. He has to pay for the weapons, the armor, the maintenance of the ludus, and the salary of his staff. From the doctoress to the Medici, it's an enterprise with massive overhead. The only way he turns a profit is by successfully leasing you out for the games. Every meal you eat, every piece of equipment you use, is an expense he needs to recoup. This economic reality leads to a fascinating historical debate. Was being a gladiator a potential path to wealth? We often hear stories of superstar gladiators who earned massive prizes and lived lives of luxury. There are accounts of fighters like a certain Flamme, a Syrian, who was awarded the rudis, the wooden sword symbolizing freedom for times and chose to remain a gladiator. He fought 30 for times, 121, drew 9, and was defeated only 4 times. He was clearly a massive star who likely earned significant prize money. However, this is a classic case of survivorship bias. Forever Flaney. There were hundreds, if not thousands, of gladiators who died in their first or second fight, earning nothing but a brutal end. The chance of becoming a wealthy superstar was infinitesimally small, a lottery ticket that nearly everyone lost. The primary beneficiary of a gladiator's success was not the gladiator himself, but his owner. The system was designed to enrich the honest, not the fighter. You see this reality play out in the ludus. The top champions, the primi poli, might have slightly better food, a private cell, or other minor privileges. They might even receive a small share of prize money, a bonus to keep them motivated. But they are still slaves. Their wealth is illusory, their freedom non-existent. You look at your own body now through the honest's eyes. The scar on your arm from the healed fracture is a mark of an expense he incurred. The new muscle on your shoulders is the result of his investment in food and training. You are a walking, breathing, fighting asset, and like any asset, you are expected to generate a return. This realization is profoundly dehumanizing. It's one thing to be a prisoner, forced to fight for your life. It's another to understand that your life and death struggle is simply a commercial transaction, a bloody spectacle designed to turn a profit for the man who owns you. One day, the honest stops to watch you train. He doesn't speak to you, but he watches your movements. Your now confident handling of the Sika and Parmula. He nods slowly, then turns and says something to the doctor. You don't hear the words, but you see the look on the doctor's face. It's a look of grim confirmation. You've been chosen. Your training is about to enter a new, more intense phase. You are no longer just a work in progress. You are being prepared for market. You are about to make your debut. Life in the ludus is an unrelenting cycle of physical exertion and mental stress. The concept of a day off as you once knew it, a day of rest, of personal freedom, of quiet reflection, is gone forever. Yet, there are moments, brief and tightly controlled, that pass for leisure. These are not gifts, they are tools of management, designed by the honest to release pressure, maintain morale, and prevent the kind of desperate despair that could lead to rebellion or suicide. Sometimes, after a particularly grueling week of training, the afternoon session might be replaced with a period of what could loosely be called free time. You are allowed to stop the drills, to put down the wooden swords, but you are not free. This rest takes place within the same high walls of the courtyard, under the watchful eyes of the trainers. The gates remain barred. It's the illusion of rest, a brief pause in the performance of your duties. During these moments, you see a different side of the men you live with. Some simply find a patch of shade, lie down, and sleep, their bodies craving any chance to recover. Others engage in games of chance, gambling for scraps of food or tiny favors using dice carved from bone or marked pebbles. It's a small way to feel a sense of control, to risk something, even if it's trivial. This is a well-documented part of life for Roman soldiers in lower classes, and it was certainly present in the barracks of the ludus. Gambling was a ubiquitous Roman pastime. You might see a group of Gauls gathered in a corner, speaking quietly in their own tongue. Their voices are low, rumbling counterpoint to the dominant Latin of the yard. Or you might see the Thracians, like Spartacus, engaged in intense, quiet conversation. These small ethnic cliques are the closest thing to social circles in this place. They are bubbles of familiarity in a sea of alienation. And here's a small, intimate detail about these rare moments of downtime hygiene. Being clean was a constant struggle, but it was important. The ludus would have a wash area, perhaps a series of troughs or a simple bathish. Keeping clean helped prevent skin diseases and infections, which could take a gladiator out of commission. So, some of your free time would be spent scrubbing the grime and sweat from your body. You might also receive a tool called a strigil, a curved metal scraper. After exercising, Romans would cover themselves in oil and then use the strigil to scrape off the oil, sweat, and dirt. This was their version of a shower. Bizarrely, the gunk scraped off famous athletes and gladiators was sometimes collected and sold in little vials to female admirers outside, who used it as a face cream, believing it held some of the fighters' virility and power. You might be a slave, but your sweat could be a cosmetic product. These rest periods are also a time for maintaining your gear. You learn to re-wrap the leather grips on your training sword, to check the straps on your shield, to oil and care for the pieces of metal and leather that are essential to your survival. This is not a chore, it's a ritual. Your equipment is an extension of yourself, and its failure in the arena could mean your death. But the most significant debate among historians regarding a gladiator's free time revolves around contact with the outside world. Were you completely sealed off, or were there managed interactions? The evidence is ambiguous. On one hand, security was paramount. The fear of another Spartacus-level revolt meant that allowing gladiators to freely mix with the general population was unthinkable. They were prisoners. However, there's compelling evidence of gladiators having relationships, and even families. Some tombstones were commissioned by a gladiator's wife, oxor, and children. How was this possible? Some scholars suggest that certain high-ranking, trusted gladiators, the superstars who were too valuable to lose and had proven their loyalty, might have been granted occasional, heavily supervised leave. Others propose that women, perhaps admirers or camp followers, might have been allowed into the ludus at certain times. A privilege controlled and likely taxed by the law on his stay. It could have been another to love control, another perk to keep his most valuable assets compliant and motivated. The exact mechanics of how these relationships were formed and maintained are lost to history, a tantalizing glimpse into a private life that seems almost impossible within the brutal context of the ludus. You experience none of this. As a Tyrol, your rest is the most basic kind. You find a spot against a sun-warmed wall, away from the boisterous gamblers and the tense political whisperings of the senior fighters. You close your eyes. You don't think about your upcoming first fight. You don't think about your past life. You try to think about nothing at all. You focus on the feeling of the sun on your skin, the distant sound of a blacksmith's hammer from a nearby workshop, the feeling of your own slow, steady breathing. These moments are fragile. They can be shattered at any second by the crack of a whip or the bark of a trainer's command, but you cherish them. They are the tiny cracks in the wall of your prison, a brief, fleeting reminder that you are more than just a body, more than just a weapon. You are a man, sitting in the sun, trying to catch his breath before the next bell rings and the relentless grind begins all over again. The date of your first match has been set. The news doesn't come as a grand announcement, but as a subtle shift in your routine. The doctor asks attention on you becomes more intense. Your training sessions are longer, more focused. You are no longer just practicing, you are preparing. And with this shift comes a new, constant companion, a cold, heavy knot of fear in the pit of your stomach. It's not the sharp, immediate fear of the whip. This is a deeper, more existential dread. It's the fear of the unknown, of the arena, of the screaming crowd, and of death itself. That night, it keeps you awake. You lie on your straw mattress, staring into the darkness of the barracks. Your mind racing. You picture the arena, a place you've only heard about in stories from the veterans. You try to imagine the roar of the crowd, the feel of the sun on your face, the weight of a real, sharp sika in your hand. Every man in the ludus deals with this fear differently. It's a silent, personal battle fought in the quiet moments between the bells. This psychological aspect of being a gladiator is a core part of the experience. You are being trained to kill, but you are also a man who knows he is very likely to be killed. How do you function under that constant, crushing pressure? You observe the veterans, the men who have walked this path before you. Some have developed a shell of hardened cynicism. They make grim jokes about death and treat the whole affair as a job. Their laughter is loud, but it doesn't always reach their eyes. This is a common coping mechanism, using humor and bravado to keep the terror at bay. You see them gambling, boasting, and projecting an aura of unbreakable confidence. Others retreat into a quiet, focused stoicism. They become withdrawn, their faces set like stone masks. They speak little, save their energy, then focus entirely on their training. They treat their fear as another opponent to be disciplined and controlled. Spartacus is like this. His intensity is a wall that keeps everything else out. He seems to channel his fear into a cold, burning rage. And then there are those who turn to religion and superstition. This is a fascinating, small detail of gladiator life. Like all Romans, gladiators were deeply superstitious. Before a fight, you might see a man quietly whispering a prayer to Nemesis, the goddess of vengeance and divine retribution, who was a patron deity of gladiators and the arena. Her shrines were common near amphitheaters. A fighter might have a lucky charm, a small, worn token from his past life that he keeps hidden. He might perform a small personal ritual before training, a specific way of wrapping his hand guards or tying his loincloth, believing it brings him luck. These small acts provided a sliver of control in a world where they had none. The psychological toll is immense. You have nightmares. You dream of your opponent, a faceless figure in a MUR-MILOS helmet. You dream of falling, of the searing pain of a sword thrust. You wake up in a cold sweat, your heart pounding, the cheers of a ghostly crowd ringing in your ears. This leads to a historical debate that is, by its nature, almost impossible to resolve. What was the rate of suicide or mental breakdown among gladiators? The Roman philosopher Seneca the Younger, a Stoic who was deeply critical of the games, provides some of our only literary evidence. He tells the famous story of a German prisoner who was being transported to the morning beast hunts, asking to go to the toilet. He killed himself by forcing the sponge on a stick used for cleaning down his own throat. Seneca tells another story of a gladiator who, on the cart taking him to the arena, deliberately put his head between the spokes of the wheel, killing himself. These accounts suggest that for some, the psychological pressure was unbearable, and suicide was preferable to performing in the arena. However, these are anecdotes from a source with a strong moral agenda. How common was it? Really, we have no statistics, no records. The Honeste would have had every reason to cover up such incidents. It was bad for business and morale. Was despair a common, unspoken epidemic in the Ludi? Or were these isolated incidents of men who simply could not be broken into the mold? We will likely never know for sure. You find your own way to cope. You don't have the bravado of the veterans or the focused rage of Spartacus. You find your solace in the routine. You pour every ounce of your energy and focus into the training. The familiar weight of the training shield, the well-worn grip of the wooden sword, the rhythmic thud against the palace, these become your anchors. When you are training, your mind is too occupied to be afraid. The physical exhaustion is a blessing. It leaves no room for existential dread. One evening, a veteran gladiator, a grizzled old Samnit who has survived a dozen fights, sees the fear in your eyes. He doesn't offer words of comfort. He just says, "Don't think about the crowd. Don't think about winning or losing. Just watch his feet." A man's whole body follows his feet. The rest is just noise. It's the most practical advice you've ever received. It's a kernel of truth to hold on to. A single, manageable task in a sea of overwhelming horror. Watch his feet. You repeat it to yourself like a mantra. It becomes your new focus. As the day of your first fight draws closer, you cling to this thought. You are terrified. Yes, but you are also a trained professional. You have a skill, a purpose, and a single, simple instruction. The fear is still there, a cold stone in your gut. But now, it has a cage. In the final weeks leading up to your first games, something strange begins to happen. You, a slave, a prisoner, a piece of property, start to become famous. It's a bizarre, disorienting experience. Your world is the enclosed, brutal reality of the ludus. But outside those walls, your name, your fighting name, is becoming a topic of conversation. The source of this newfound fame is the pre-game publicity. The editor, the wealthy magistrate or nobleman sponsoring the games, wants to ensure a full house. An empty amphitheater is a public embarrassment, so he invests heavily in advertising. Painted notices, called dictamium ram, are put up in public places all over the city. They announce the date of the games, the name of the editor, who is, of course, the real star of the show, and the main attractions, and that includes you. You hear about it from one of the trainers who has been into town. He mentions, with a smirk, that he saw your name painted on a wall near the forum. Donner the Thracian, it said, listed opposite your opponent. You are Milo named Festus from a rival ludus. The notice might even include details like Pugnar on my first fight for you, and the win-loss record for your more experienced opponent. This is a core historical reality. The Romans were masters of advertisement, and the gladiatorial games were one of their biggest products. These painted notices were the movie posters of their day. Then, the whispers start among the ludus staff. Gamblers are starting to place their bets. Your odds aren't good. You're Gladiator, a rookie, up against a man with a few fights under his belt. Most of the money is on Festus. This is another layer of your commodification. You are now a subject of financial speculation. Like a racehorse, your potential death is something people are actively betting on. But the most surreal part of this phenomenon is the fan culture. Here is a truly weird aspect of gladiator life despite being slaves and social outcasts. In fames, successful gladiators were the rock stars of their day. They had fan clubs. Children played with gladiator action figures carved from clay. Their images appeared on mosaics, pottery, and lamps, and they had a powerful, almost magnetic appeal to some Roman women, particularly those in the upper classes. The poet Juvenal wrote a scathing satire about a senator's wife, Poppaea, who supposedly ran off to Egypt with her favorite gladiator, a man named Sergius. Juvenal describes Sergius as middle-aged, with a scarred face and a damaged arm, hardly a movie star. But to Poppaea, he was a hero. Steel is what they fall in love with. Juvenal sneers. While this is satire, it points to a real social phenomenon. The gladiator represented a raw, dangerous masculinity that was a world away from the perfumed, decadent lives of the Roman elite. They were a forbidden thrill. You get a small, strange taste of this yourself. One day, a high-ranking member of the ludus staff tells you that a wealthy matron, a woman of some importance in the city, has taken a special interest in your upcoming match. She has sent a gift to the Lanus Day to ensure you receive the best possible care and equipment. It's a deeply unsettling thought. Some unseen person is now personally invested in your performance. Your life and death have become a spectator sport for the rich. This leads to a historical debate: how much interaction did gladiators really have with their fans? Was the story of Epii a wild exaggeration? Or did these relationships actually happen? The evidence is tantalizingly scarce. On one side, the strict security of the ludus would make such liaisons nearly impossible. Aelanus Te would be insane to risk his valuable property and the security of his school for the sake of a wealthy woman's whim. On the other side, the graffiti from Pompey clearly links specific gladiators with the girls. Cresci as the ready Arius nets the girls at night. One famous graffito reads, "This suggests some level of interaction was happening. Perhaps it was limited to flirtatious encounters during the pre-game parade, or perhaps, as mentioned before, certain trusted, superstar gladiators were granted more freedom. Or maybe the Lanus Day themselves arranged these encounters for a price, another revenue stream in their bloody business. You don't experience any of this directly. No one is sending you love notes, but you feel the shift in the atmosphere. The way the trainers look at you has changed. You are no longer just another trainee. You are an investment about to mature. a product about to launch. The new, real armor you are given to practice with is of a slightly higher quality. The food you receive seems a fraction better. These are not signs of affection, they are business decisions. The honest is polishing his asset before putting it on display. This newfound, distant fame is not comforting. It's alienating. People outside are talking about a character named Honor the Thracian. They have an image of you in their minds, a fierce, exotic warrior. They know nothing of the terrified young man who lies awake at night, the man who misses the smell of his homeland, the man who is just trying to remember the simple advice to watch his feet. You have become a public fantasy, a projection of the crowd's desires for blood, sex, and spectacle, and the disconnect between that fantasy and your grim reality is a heavy burden to carry as you walk towards the arena. The night before your first fight is unlike any other. The usual routine of the ludus is broken. There is no evening training session. Instead, you and the other gladiators scheduled to fight tomorrow are lead out of the ludus. This is a rare, shocking departure from your confinement. Under heavy guard, you are marched through the twilight streets of the city to a public hall or a wealthy villa. This is the smelly, the freed inner. This pre-game feast is a well-documented Roman tradition. It was part public relations event, part psychological ritual. The dinner was open to the public, or at least to paying ticket holders. It was a chance for gamblers to get a last look at the fighters, to inspect their physical condition and gauge their morale before placing their final bets. It was also a chance for fans to see their heroes up close. The general public would press in, staring at you as you ate, commenting on your physique, your scars, and your apparent mood. You are seated at a long table laden with food, and for the first time since your capture, you are presented with a genuine feast. The bland, monotonous barley porridge is gone. In its place are platters of roasted meat, pork, chicken, maybe even goat. There are loaves of soft white bread, bowls of olives, plates of cheese, and sweet figs for dessert. And, most shockingly, there is wine. Real, undiluted wine, not the sour vinegar water of the barracks. The sensory overload is overwhelming. The smell of roasting meat, the taste of seasoned food, the warmth of the wine spreading through your veins. It's a ghost of your former life. A life of simple pleasures you thought you had lost forever. You eat, you devour the food, not just from hunger, but from a deep, primal need to experience something good, something real, one last time. But this is no joyful banquet. The atmosphere is thick with tension and a strange, morbid energy. You look around at the other fighters. Each man is a study in coping. Some, like the veteran champions, eat and drink with gusto, laughing loudly and boasting about the victories they will claim tomorrow. They are performing, both for the crowd and for themselves, projecting an image of fearlessness. Others are quiet, almost sullen. They pick at their food, their eyes distant. They are lost in their own thoughts. Already in the arena, a few, the most terrified of the novices, can't even eat. They just stare at the lavish spread, their stomachs churning with fear. And here is a small, poignant detail of the smelly bara. While the public saw it as a spectacle, for the gladiators, it had a deeper, more solemn meaning. For many, it was treated as their last meal. It was a chance to enjoy the pleasures of the flesh one final time before facing oblivion. But it was also a time for business. Some gladiators would use this public opportunity to settle their affairs. A fighter might give a message to a trusted friend or a sympathetic god, asking them to make sure their meager possessions went to a particular personal wife, a child, or a fellow gladiator who belonged to the same burial society. It was a moment to put their house in order, a practical acknowledgement that they might not have another chance. This tradition has led to a debate among historians about its true purpose. Was the smelly bara a genuine act of generosity from the editor, a final kindness before the slaughter, or was it a more cynical psychological tool? One theory suggests that the rich food and wine were deliberately designed to make the gladiators sluggish and less sharp for the fight. perhaps leading to a more chaotic and bloody spectacle for the crowd. Another theory is that it was a test of discipline. The trainers in the Law would watch closely. A man who gored himself and drank to excess might be seen as lacking the mental fortitude for the fight. The truly professional gladiator would eat well to build his strength, but would not indulge to the point of foolishness. Your every action, even at this free dinner, is being judged. You find yourself somewhere in the middle. The wine loosens the knot of fear in your stomach, but you drink with caution. The meat tastes incredible, but you eat slowly, methodically, knowing you need the strength for tomorrow. You try to ignore the prying eyes of the spectators, the people who have paid to watch you eat. You focus on your own small space at the table. You look across at your opponent for tomorrow. Festus the MU Armillo. He's at another table with the men from his own ludus. HES, a big man, broad-shouldered, with a thick neck. HES laughing with his comrades, a tankard of wine in his hand. He looks confident, powerful, then utterly terrifying. He catches you looking, and for a moment, his eyes meet yours. There is no animosity in his gaze, no personal hatred. There is only a flat, professional acknowledgement. You are the man he has to get through tomorrow. You are his job. Later, as you are marched back to the ludus under a sky full of stars, the wine and food have settled into a heavy warmth in your belly. The city is quiet now. The brief, surreal excursion into the world of the living is over. You are back within the familiar, oppressive walls of your prison. You are led not to the main barracks, but to a separate, more secure cell, where you will spend the night in isolation. As the heavy wooden door bolts shut, you are left alone in the darkness. The feast is over. The countdown is over. Tomorrow is the day. The morning of the games arrives not with a bell, but with a quiet, purposeful stir in the pre-dawn darkness. There is no shouting, no rush. The final preparations are made with a solemn, ritualistic gravity. You are given a simple breakfast, a small piece of bread and some water. Your stomach is a tight knot of nerves, and you can barely swallow. Today, you will wear real armor. Today, you will carry a real, sharpened sword. You are taken to the armory, where your fighting gear is laid out. It gleams in the low light of the oil lamps. The bronze of your Thracian helmet, with its proud griffin crest, the polished metal of your high greaves, the small, sturdy parmula shield, and the seeker. You pick it up. It's heavier than the wooden practice sword, but also more balanced. You run your thumb gently over the curved edge. It is lethally sharp. This is no longer a game. This is real. You dress slowly, methodically. The padded wrappings on your arm, the greaves strapped tightly to your legs, the loincloth, the heavy helmet. Each piece adds a layer of weight, a layer of reality. When you are fully dressed, you look in a polished bronze mirror. The man staring back is a stranger. He is not the farmer or fisherman or warrior you once were. He is Donner the Thracian, the creature of the arena, a fantasy brought to life in bronze and leather. Then, it's time. You and the other gladiators are assembled in the courtyard. The Law gives a final, terse speech. He doesn't talk of glory, he talks of professionalism. Do what you were trained to do. Do not show fear. Make the familiar proud. The gates of the ludus are unbarred. You march out into the morning light. The journey to the amphitheater is a spectacle in itself. This is the pompa, the grand procession. It's the final piece of marketing before the show begins. The gladiators are paraded through the streets of the city, led by musicians playing horns and trumpets, and officials carrying banners and religious icons. The streets are lined with people, a riot of color and noise. They cheer, they shout, they throw flowers, they call out the names of their favorite fighters. You hear your own name, Donner, shouted by a stranger in the crowd. The sound is jarring and surreal. This procession is a core part of the manus, the gladiatorial gift to the people. It was a way for the editor to display the quality and expense of the fighters he had procured. It whipped the crowd into a frenzy of anticipation. For you, it's a terrifying ordeal. You are on display, a prize animal being led to the show. You keep your eyes fixed straight ahead, your helmet hiding your face, your expression grim. You focus on the back of the man in front of you, on the rhythmic tramp of your own feet on the stone-paved street. Here's a small, curious detail about the Pampa. The order of the procession was hierarchical. The most famous and anticipated fighters would be placed in positions of prominence. Novices like you would be mixed in, part of the general spectacle but not the main focus. The procession would also include the condemned criminals damnati, who were scheduled for execution during the midday break, a grim counterpoint to the glamour of the armored gladiators. The whole spectrum of the day's violence was paraded for the public to see. You arrive at the amphitheater. It's a colossal structure of stone and arches, a man-made mountain dedicated to spectacle. You march through a dark, cavernous tunnel, the Porta Triumphales, the grand entrance. The roar of the crowd, which was a dull rumble outside, becomes a deafening, physical force. It presses in on you, a wave of sound that you feel in your bones. You step out into the arena. The light is blinding, the scale of the place staggering. You look up at the tiered seats, a dizzying wall of humanity stretching up to the sky. Tens of thousands of people, a sea of faces, all looking down at you. The sand of the arena floor is a pale, yellow-white, raked clean and fresh for the day's events. You know that by evening, it will be stained dark in patches. You and the other gladiators perform a lap of the arena, a final salute to the crowd. You pass the imperial box, or the box of the editor, the sponsor of the games. And here, tradition dictates, you deliver the famous line. You raise your armband. In a chorus with the other fighters, you shout the words you were made to memorize: Ave, Imperator, Mortarior te salutant. Hail, Emperor, we who are about to die salute you. This brings us to one of the most famous and debated lines in all of Roman history. Did gladiators actually say this? The source for this quote is the Roman historian Suetonius, who attributes it to a group of criminals and prisoners of war forced to fight in a mock naval battle on a lake. A nomaki hai. For the Emperor Claudius, there is no other ancient source that says this was a standard greeting for all gladiators in the regular arena. Most historians now believe that this was a one-off event, a desperate plea from condemned men, not a routine part of the ceremony. The romantic image of every gladiator proclaiming their impending doom is likely a Hollywood invention. It was probably far more businesslike, a simple salute to the editor. But standing there, in the center of the colossal, screaming amphitheater, the line feels true, whether you say it or not. You are here to risk death for the entertainment of these people. You complete your lap and are led out of the arena through another gate, into the waiting cells and tunnels beneath the stands. The grand entrance is over. Now, you wait for your turn to come back out, and you know the next time you step onto that end, it will be to fight. You are in the backstage of the amphitheater, a labyrinth of dark, damp tunnels and holding cells beneath the stands. The air is thick with the smell of nervous sweat, wild animals, and fear. The roar of the crowd is a constant, muffled thunder that vibrates through the stone walls. This is the waiting room for death. The day's events, the Mun era, do not begin with the highly anticipated gladiator duels. They start with the warm-up acts, the morning's entertainment designed to whet the crowd's appetite for violence. First come the Venetianess, the wild beast hunts. From your cell, you can hear the sounds, the creak of winches lifting cages from the substructures, the clang of iron gates, and then the guttural roars and snarls of exotic animals forced into the blinding sunlight of the arena. Lions from North Africa, bears from Caledonia, wild boars from the forests of Germania. These creatures, captured at great expense, are a display of the vast reach and power of the Roman Empire. They are pitted against best-armed beast fighters who are a separate class from gladiators. Some best-IRE were skilled professionals who fought with spears and bows, hunting the animals in a highly choreographed display, but others were simply condemned criminals. Damned at best, as thrown to the beasts with little or no means of defense. You don't see it, but you hear it. You hear the panicked trumpeting of an elephant, the deep-chested roar of a lion, and, most chillingly, the brief, terrified screams of men. The crowd roars its approval with each kill. This spectacle of man versus beast is a well-documented and hugely popular part of the games. It reaffirmed the Roman sense of order over the chaos of the natural world. After the Venetian-esque, around midday, comes the intermission. This is not a time for the audience to stretch their legs and buy snacks. This is the time for the meridini, the midday executions. This is perhaps the most brutal and honest part of the day's proceedings. There is no pretense of sport or fair combat here. This is state-sanctioned killing as public entertainment. Condemned criminals, murderers, arsonists, deserters, and followers of outlawed religions are brought into the arena. They are unarmed, sometimes tied to stakes. The executions are often staged as grotesquerie enactments of myths. A man might be dressed as Orpheus and be torn apart by a bear. Another might be costumed as Icarus and thrown from a height. The most common form of execution was simply being killed by a sword. A designated executioner, sometimes a soldier or a specific gladiator tasked with the grim duty, would dispatch the condemned one by one. Here is a grimly fascinating, small detail about this process: the role of Charon and Mercury. After a man was killed in the arena, be it a criminal or a defeated gladiator, two costumed figures would enter. One was dressed as Charon, the mythical ferryman of the underworld. He would strike the body with a large hammer to confirm death. The other was dressed as Mercury, the psychopomp who guided souls to the afterlife. He would touch the body with a hot iron rod, a final, definitive test for life. This ritualized confirmation of death added a layer of morbid theater to the proceedings, turning a brutal killing into a quasi-religious ceremony. Use it in your cell, listening to the sounds of the midday executions filtering down the corridor. You try to block it out, to focus on the advice of the old veteran: watch his feet. But the screams are hard to ignore. They are a stark reminder of the purpose of this place. This entire, colossal structure is a theater of death, and you are just one of the players in the afternoon show. This part of the games leads to a significant historical debate. What was the psychological effect of this rampant public violence on the Roman populace? Did it desensitize them to suffering and brutality, fostering a cruel and callous society? Writers like Seneca certainly thought so. He famously described his disgust after accidentally attending the midday executions, saying, "I come home more greedy, more ambitious, more voluptuous, and even more cruel and inhuman, because I have been among human beings." On the other side, some scholars argue that the Romans saw this as a necessary function of justice. These were criminals receiving their just deserts. The executions were a demonstration of the power of the state and a warning to potential wrongdoers. It was civic, not sadistic. The truth is likely that it was both. It was a complex social phenomenon that served as both a judicial tool and a deeply disturbing form of mass entertainment. As the sounds of the executions fade, a new tension fills the air. The afternoon is coming. Your time is coming. A guard appears at your cell door. He carries a small wooden tablet. He looks at it, then at you. Donner, the Thracian, you're next. He unlocks the door. The sound of the key turning in the lock is the loudest thing you have ever heard. You take a deep breath, the air cold in your lungs. You stand up, your legs feeling strangely unsteady. You walk out of the cell and down the long, dark tunnel that leads into the light. The roar of the crowd grows louder with every step. You emerge from the dark tunnel and are hit by a wall of sound and light. The sheer sensory overload is staggering. The afternoon sun is high and hot, reflecting off the pales and with a blinding intensity. After the gloom of the waiting cells, it takes a moment for your eyes to adjust. The amphitheater is a living, breathing entity, a cauldron of noise and anticipation. The roar of tens of thousands of people is not just a sound, it's a physical pressure against your skin, a vibration in the soles of your sandals. You walk towards the center of the arena. Your opponent, Festus the Amur, is walking from the opposite gate. The sand crunches under your feet. It rakes smooth, but you can see darker. Damp patches here and there, hastily covered with fresh sand. You try not to think about what caused them. You feel strangely disconnected, as if you're watching yourself from a great distance. Your mouth is dry. Your heart is a frantic drum against your ribs, but your body, honed by months of relentless training, moves with an economy and purpose that feels alien to your terrified mind. You are in the heart of the Colosseum, or a place just like it. This is the stage for Rome's most potent cultural ritual. The historical significance of these arenas cannot be overstated. They were not just sports stadiums, they were political tools. An emperor or a wealthy politician sponsored the games to win the favor of the masses, a policy famously dubbed bread and circuses by the poet Juvenal. By providing this spectacular, free entertainment, the ruling class kept the volatile urban population distracted and content. The arena was where the power of the emperor, the vastness of the empire, and the concept of Roman justice were made brutally, viscerally real for every citizen to see. You and Festus approach the center of the arena. You stop a few paces from each other. You look at him, really look at him, for the first time without the filter of a crowd or the haze of wine. He is a mountain of a man. His large, rectangular scutum is planted firmly in the sand before him. His helmet, with its distinctive fin-like crest, completely hides his face, making him an enormous, intimidating force. All you can see are his eyes, dark and focused, through the small eye holes. He holds his gladius, the short, straight Roman sword, loosely at his side. He is the classic heavy infantryman, a walking fortress. You, with your small square shield and curved seta, feel dangerously exposed. And here is a small, practical detail of the arena. You might not consider the sand. The floor is covered in and arena in Latin, which is where we get the word arena for a very specific and grim reason. It was excellent at soaking up blood. It prevented the fighters from slipping and made the gruesome evidence of the day's combat easier to clean up. After each match, attendants would come out to rake the sand, cover the stains, and remove the bodies. The pristine, sun-bleached surface you're standing on is a temporary illusion, a fresh canvas for the violence to come. A trumpet blast cuts through the roar of the crowd, signaling the start of the match. The referee, the Summa Rudis, takes his position nearby. He is an experienced official, often a retired gladiator himself, who is there to enforce the rules of combat and make the final call on a winner. He carries a long staff Rudis to separate the fighters if necessary. This is where a popular misconception meets a historical debate. The image we have is often of a lawless, anything-goes deathmatch, but gladiatorial combat, at least between trained professionals like you, was governed by rules. It was a pugna, a fight, not just butchery. Certain blows might be forbidden. If a fighter fell, he was typically allowed to get back up. If a weapon broke, it might be replaced. The referee could pause the fight if a piece of armor came loose. The debate among historians is about how strictly these rules were enforced. Did it vary from city to city? Did the mood of the crowd or the whim of the editor override the rulebook? Some evidence suggests the combat was highly regulated, a true martial sport. Other accounts describe it as a chaotic mess. The truth is likely that it depended on the day. For now, the rules don't matter. All that matters is the man in front of you. The crowd's roar fades to a dull, background hum. Your world shrinks to the space between you and Festus. You remember the old veteran's advice, watch his feet. You begin to circle each other, a slow, predatory dance on the hot sand. You hold your small parmula high. Your Sika ready. Festus turns with you, his huge shield dangled towards you, presenting an almost impenetrable wall of wooden bronze. You are speed against power, agility against defense, the classic matchup. Your mind, once a storm of fear, becomes preternaturally calm and clear. The months of training take over. You are no longer thinking, you are reacting. You see the slight shift in his weight, the way his front foot digs into the sand as he prepares to advance. You are a THRAX. You are a weapon, and the fight is about to begin. The first blow has yet to be struck. But here, in the center of the world, under the gaze of thousands, your true and final test has arrived. The dance is over. Festus makes the first move. He lunges forward, not with his sword, but with his shield. It's a classic MUR mellow tactic using the massive, heavy scudum as a battering ram. You leap back, the corner of his shield whistling past your chest. The sheer power of the move surprises you. If that had connected, it could have broken your ribs and knocked you to the sand. The crowd roars, appreciating the aggression. This is the first lesson of the real fight. It's nothing like the movies. There are no long, elegant exchanges of swordplay, no witty banter. Real combat is clumsy, exhausting, and brutal. It's a contest of stamina and opportunism, not grace. The fighters are encased in heavy, vision-restricting helmets. They are breathing hard, their bodies slick with sweat. The fight is punctuated by grunts of effort, the heavy thud of a weapon on a shield, and the desperate, ragged sound of breathing. You stick to your training. As a THRAX, you are the aggressor, but a cunning one. You dart in and out, trying to stay outside the effective range of his short gladius. You slash at his shield arm with your curved Sika, not trying to wound him, but to test his defenses and keep him turning. Clang, thud, clang. The sound of your blade hitting his shield and arm guard is jarring. Each blow sends a shock up your arm. He is a fortress, and you are just chipping away at the walls. He is patient. He lets you waste your energy. He keeps his shield high, a solid defense, waiting for you to make a mistake. The sun is relentless, beating down on your helmet, which is rapidly turning into an oven. Sweat stings your eyes. Your arm is getting heavy. Fatigue is a more dangerous enemy than the man in front of you. Here's a small, often overlooked detail about the reality of fighting in armor: dehydration and heat exhaustion. The heavy bronze helmet traps heat, and the physical exertion is immense. Gladiators would lose a tremendous amount of body fluid during a match. This is why stamina was just as important as skill or strength. A fighter who tired first was a fighter who was about to die. Your high-carb, barley-heavy diet was designed for this, to give you the slow burn energy needed to outlast your opponent. The fight is as much a battle of metabolic efficiency as it is of martial prowess. Festus sees you slowing, just a fraction. He sees his chance. He lunges again, this time leading with his sword. A straight, powerful thrust aimed at your chest. You pivot, deflecting the blow with your small parmula. The force of it is immense, nearly knocking the shield from your grasp. The tip of his gladius scrapes along the bronze edge of your shield with a horrific screech. He overextends, just for a second. This is your opening, the one you've trained for. While his sword arm is extended, the right side of his body is momentarily open. You duck under his arm and bring your Sika around in a sweeping, upward arc. You are aiming for the back of his knee, an area not fully protected by his greave. You put all your weight into the blow. You feel a satisfying, sickening thud as your blade connects. It's not a clean cut, nor of a powerful, gouging slash. Festus bellows in pain and surprise. A deep, animalistic sound. He stumbles, his right leg buckling. The crowd screams. A single, unified roar of bloodlust. You've drawn first blood. This moment brings up a historical debate about the nature of gladiator wounds. Were they aiming to kill or to incapacitate, while a killing blow was always the ultimate goal? Many fights were likely won by inflicting a disabling, but not immediately fatal, injury. A deep cut to a leg or an arm could render an opponent unable to continue, forcing them to submit. The skeletal remains of gladiators show many non-fatal wounds to limbs, alongside the lethal ones to the head and chest. A smart gladiator didn't just hack wildly, he targeted weaknesses, aiming for a strategic victory. It was a brutal science. Festus is wounded, but not out. The injury has made him furious. He turns, his face contorted with rage behind his helmet's grill. He comes at you, not with technique now, but with pure, brute force. He swings his gladius in wide, powerful arcs, forcing you onto the defensive. HES like a wounded bear. Clumsy, but incredibly dangerous. You backpedal, your small shield feeling desperately inadequate against his onslaught. You deflect one blow, then another. Your arm screams in protest. You are tired. Your lungs burning. You can feel your own movements getting sloppy. You stumble backward over your own feet and fall, landing hard on the sand. It's over. You know it. You're on the ground, your weapon nearly jarred from your hand. Festus stands over you, his massive frame blocking out the sun. He has his sword raised, the point aimed directly at your throat. The arena falls silent. A sudden, shocking absence of noise. The fight is done. He has won. Now, only one question remains. You are on your back, the Hudson course against your skin. The world is a dizzying view of your opponent's massive form silhouetted against the bright, indifferent sky. Festus' labored breathing is the only sound you can hear. The harsh, ragged panting, the point of his gladius is steady, just inches from your throat. The cold, metallic thread of it is the most real thing you have ever felt. You are utterly defeated. In this moment, your training dictates your final move. You do not beg. You do not cry out. You perform the gesture of submission, the ad digitum. You drop your sika and your shield into the sand and raise your left hand, your index finger extended. This is the universally recognized signal that you are yielding. You are surrendering your life not to your opponent, but to the authority who presides over the games. This gesture is a crucial, well-documented piece of arena protocol. It officially ends the combat and passes the judgment to the editor, the sponsor of the games. Your opponent, Festus, cannot legally kill you now that you have surrendered. He must wait for the verdict. He stands over you, his sword still aimed at your throat. Waiting, he is also exhausted, leaning heavily on his good leg, the blood from his wound trickling down into the sand. The entire amphitheater is silent. Tens of thousands of people are holding their breath, their eyes fixed on the center of the arena. Now comes the moment of truth, the part of the spectacle that gives the audience a feeling of ultimate power. The editor, from his decorated box, turns to the crowd. He is asking for their verdict. Should the loser live or die? This is the famous thumbs up, thumbs down moment, an image burned into our collective consciousness by paintings and movies. The crowd responds, shouting and gesturing. And here we hit one of the most persistent and debated myths of the ancient world. The gesture for death was almost certainly not thumbs down polus verso. So what was the gesture? This is the core of the historical debate. The literary and artistic evidence is frustratingly ambiguous. One prominent theory is that the gesture for death was actually thumbs up, meant to symbolize a drawn sword. The gesture for life, or pardon monsieur, might have been a closed fist with the thumb tucked inside. The polus cumbris, symbolizing a sheathed sword. Another theory suggests that a waving handkerchief or a flat, opened hand signaled mercy. The truth is, we don't know for sure. The gestures may have even varied by region or over time. But the one thing most historians agree on is that the simple thumbs down for death is likely a modern invention. You can't see the crowd clearly. You just hear the noise, a confusing roar of voices. Some are shouting mid, let him go. Others are shouting at you, Gula, slay him. It's a referendum on your performance. Did you fight bravely? Did you provide good entertainment? A guard who surrendered at the first sign of trouble would be condemned without a second thought. But you fought hard. You wounded the veteran. You put on a good show. You feel a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, you've earned your life. The editor listens to the crowd, gauging their mood, but the final decision is his. The crowd's vote is purely advisory. He can choose to be merciful, showing his benevolence, or he can choose to be severe, showing his commitment to equality. Bloodthirsty show. His decision is often unpolitical. If the crowd is overwhelmingly in favor of death, ignoring them could be a political liability. He makes his decision. He gives the signal. From your position on the ground, you can't see the gesture clearly. You watch your opponent's body language for the verdict. Festus sees the signal from the editor's box. He hesitates for a moment, then he lowers his sword. He is letting you live. A wave of relief so profound it's nauseating washes over you. You are alive. You have failed, but you have survived. The crowd roars its approval of the editor's mercy. The tension is broken. Festus turns and limps away, acknowledging the cheers of the crowd for his victory. The referee, the sumo rudis, helps you to your feet. You are dizzy. Your body is a symphony of pain, but you are standing. You collect your dropped weapons from the sand and begin the long, shameful walk back towards the gate you came from. The Portus and of Ivoria, the gate of the living. The walk is an agony of humiliation. You have been beaten. You have been judged. You have been spared. The crowd watches you, some with pity, others with contempt. You are a loser, but you are a living loser. And in the brutal calculus of the arena, that is a victory of its own kind. You limp through the gate and back into the shadowy tunnels beneath the arena. The roar of the crowd fades behind you, replaced by the quiet, business-like movements of the arena staff. Your moment in the sun is over. You are no longer a spectacle, just a piece of damaged goods to be processed. A medic from your ludus immediately takes charge of you, his face a mask of professional indifference. He inspects your cuts and bruises, cleaning them with vinegar and water. The sting is sharp, but you barely feel it. Your body's still numb with adrenaline and relief. You have won, not the fight, but the prize of continued existence. The feeling is not one of elation or glory. It's a strange, hollow sensation. You are alive. But what does that mean? It means you get to return to the ludus, to the endless routine of training in the bland barley porridge. It means you get to do this all over again. This is the stark reality of victory in the arena, a fundamental aspect of the gladiator's career. Winning a match did not mean you were one step closer to freedom. It meant you had just increased your value to your lawn estate. A gladiator with a win on his record was a more valuable commodity. He could be leased out for a higher fee in the next games. Your survival was good for business. The rewards for a victory could be tangible. The winner of a major fight might be presented with a palm branch, a symbol of victory, and a crown. More importantly, he might receive prize money, the premium. This money was often given on a platter to the fighter, right there in the arena. A public display of the rewards of success. And here's a peculiar detail about that prize money. You didn't necessarily get to keep all of it. The lawn estate, as your owner, would take a significant cut, if not the entire amount, as reimbursement for your training and upkeep. A particularly successful and trusted gladiator might be allowed to keep a portion of his earnings, which he could use to buy small luxuries, gamble, or save in the faint hope of one day buying his freedom. But for most, the prize money was a temporary illusion of wealth, quickly absorbed back into the business that owned them. As a survivor of a good fight, even a losing one where you were granted missio, you return to the ludus with a new status. You are no longer a tiro. You are a veteranus, the veteran of one fight. You have faced the arena unlived. The other novices now look at you with a mixture of awe and respect. You have knowledge they do not. You know the sound of the crowd, the feel of real combat, the weight of a life or death judgment. You are now part of the established hierarchy. But this new status is a double-edged sword. You've proven you can survive. You've proven you can put on a good show. This means you are now a reliable asset. The Laniste will be eager to get you back in the arena, to start turning him money. Your rest period will be just long enough for your wounds to heal. This leads to a historical debate. What was the average career length of a successful gladiator? The romantic image is of fighters who last for dozens of matches over many years, like the legendary Flamme, and some gladiators did have remarkably long careers. Tombstones sometimes record careers of 10, 20, or even more fights. However, statistical analysis of gladiator tombstones suggests this was the exception, not the rule. One study of a large sample of gladiator remains concluded that the average age of death was in the early 22nd, and that most did not survive more than 5 to 10 fights. A winning streak was incredibly difficult to maintain. Every single match was a roll of the dice. An unlucky slip, a moment of inattention, a particularly determined opponent, or a merciless crowd could end a career at any moment. So while victory brought rewards and status, it really only bought you a ticket to the next round of Russian roulette. When you arrive back at the ludus, the atmosphere is different. The Laniste gives you a curt nod of approval. You weren't victorious, but you were spared, which means his investment is safe. You fought bravely, which means your market value has increased. He is satisfied. Your colleagues greet you with a quiet respect. The veteran who gave you the advice to watch his feet claps you on the shoulder. You fought well, boy, he grunts. It's the highest praise you could imagine. You have been accepted into the brotherhood of survivors. That night, you lie on your bunk, your body aching. The small cuts burn, and the deep bruises throb. You are not the same person who left the ludus that morning. You have the scar on your soul now. A quiet, cold knowledge of what it means to be judged by thousands and to walk away from the brink of death. Victory in this world isn't about a palm branch or a bag of coins. It's about the simple, profound fact that you get to see the sun rise tomorrow. And you know, with a chilling certainty, that you will have to earn that privilege again and again. Your first fight is over. You survived, but you did not win. You carry the strange, dual status of being a survivor and a loser. The physical wounds that cuts, the bruises, the deep ache in your muscles will heal. The psychological mark of the defeat, however, is a different kind of burden. In the days following the match, you are treated with a mixture of professional care and quiet contempt. The medic attends to your injuries with the same dispassionate efficiency as before, ensuring the Laniste's asset is properly repaired. But you feel a subtle shift in how you are perceived. You are no longer the promising unknown. You are the man who had to beg for his life with his finger raised. This is the grim reality of a loss in the arena. Even when granted missio pardon, a defeat carried a stigma. The Roman ethos was obsessed with victory and dominance. To be defeated was to be shamed. While the crowd and the editor may have been merciful, your value in the cold-hearted ledger of the ludus has taken a hit. You are now a known quantity, and that quantity is not quite good enough. There were financial consequences to failure as well. A winning gladiator might earn a prize. A losing gladiator might incur a debt. Some contracts stipulated that if a gladiator was defeated but spared, his Laniste might have to pay a penalty to the editor, or at least receive a much smaller fee. This loss of revenue would invariably be passed down to you in some form, perhaps through worse rations, more grueling chores, or simply the constant, unspoken disapproval of your owner. You are now a less profitable investment. And here's a small, grim detail about the life of a defeated gladiator, the psychological game. The doctor and trainers might use your defeat as a motivational tool, constantly reminding you of your failure. Festus would have killed you if he were a little faster. The crowd took pity on you like a stray dog. This wasn't just cruelty for its own sake. It was a calculated strategy to instill in you a desperate hunger for victory, to make you fear the shame of defeat even more than death itself. They are trying to rebuild you, to make you harder, angrier, more determined to win next time. You carry the memory of the fight with you constantly. You replay the moment of your fall over and over in your mind. What did you do wrong? Was your footwork sloppy? Did you drop your shield too low? You analyze every second, every movement, tormenting yourself with the what-ifs. This obsessive analysis is both a curse and a necessity. To survive your next fight, you must learn from the mistakes of the last one. This brings us to a historical debate surrounding the fate of consistently losing gladiators. What happened to a fighter who survived a few matches, but never managed to win the superstar model of Flam? He is easy to understand. But what about the mediocre gladiator? The evidence is scarce. Some scholars suggest they would be relegated to less prestigious provincial games, where the competition was weaker. They might be used as cannon fodder to build up the reputation of a more promising young fighter. Others theorize they could be re-rolled, perhaps moved from one-on-one combat to the chaotic team events called Greg A. Tim, where individual skill was less important than just being another body in the fray. The most chilling theory is that Honeste might simply cut his losses. A gladiator who consistently failed to perform was a drain on resources. He might be sold off at a discount to a less reputable ludus, or to a minor quarry where a strong body was still useful, even if it lacked fighting prowess. In the worst-case scenario, he could be condemned to the same fate as a common criminal, thrown to the beasts in the morning shows with no chance of a fair fight. Your survival was always conditional on your profitability. You see this reality in the ludus. There is an older Gaul who has fought 4 times. He survived all 4, but lost every single one. He is a ghost in the barracks. He trains with a joyless, mechanical application, but the fire is gone from his eyes. The younger IR ones are already better than he is. The trainers ignore him. He is taking up space, eating food, and generating no income. One day, he is simply gone. No one says where he went. No one asks. The silence is answer enough. You were terrified of becoming that man. The fear of death is still there, but now it has a companion, the fear of failure. You throw yourself back into training with a desperate ferocity. Every drill, every sparring session is a chance to redeem yourself. You are no longer just fighting for your life, you are fighting for your relevance. The shame of the defeat is a heavy cloak, but you learn to wear it. It becomes a fuel. You remember the sight of Festus standing over you, the collective judgment of the crowd, the long walk of shame back to the gate, and you make a silent vow. Next time will be different. Next time, you will not be the one on the ground. Next time, you will be the one whose victory is cheered, not the one whose survival is pitied. The sting of defeat has taught you a lesson more profound than any training drill in the arena. The only thing worse than dying is losing. In the quiet moments of the ludus, between the grueling training sessions and the bland meals, a story is sometimes whispered among the men. It's a story that represents the ultimate, almost unattainable dream for every man trapped within these walls. It's the story of the rudis. The rudis is a simple object, a wooden sword, much like the ones used for training, but it is imbued with a powerful, almost magical symbolism. To be awarded the rudis by the editor in the center of the arena was to be granted your freedom. It was the ultimate prize, more valuable than any amount of gold. It meant your contract was fulfilled. Your slavery was over. You could walk out of the amphitheater, not through the gate of the living or the gate of the dead, but as a free man. This is a well-documented historical fact. The granting of the rudis was a real, if will, event. It was the pinnacle of a gladiator's career, a public acknowledgement of extraordinary skill, bravery, and a long record of survival and victory. A gladiator who received the rudis became a rudi arias. He was no longer bound to the Honeste or the arena. The dream of the rudis is what keeps many men going. It's a flicker of light in an oppressive darkness. You hear the stories of legendary fighters who earned their freedom, men who fought for years, survived dozens of matches, and became such massive public heroes that the crowd and the editor rewarded them with their lives back. These stories are passed down like sacred texts, a source of hope in a hopeless situation. But here's the strange and fascinating detail about receiving the rudies. It wasn't always the end of a gladiator's story. What does a man who has spent his entire adult life training to kill do? When he is suddenly free, his skills are not transferable to civilian life. He is a master of a trade that has no place outside the arena. Because of this, some rudiari chose to stay in the world they knew. Some became trainers themselves, the ultimate doctors, passing on their hard-won knowledge to a new generation of fighters. They were respected and well paid, having achieved the highest possible status within the gladiatorial world. Others, even more bizarrely, chose to continue fighting. The Syrian gladiator Flame, who was famously awarded the rudies for separate times and refused it each time to continue his career, is the most extreme example. Why would a free man choose to return to a life of mortal peril? Perhaps it was for the fame, the adrenaline, the roar of the crowd, or perhaps, after so many years, the violent life of the arena was the only one that felt real to them. They were free, but they were also institutionalized. This choice to leave or to stay is the heart of a historical debate about the psychology of the Rudi Arias. Was the freedom granted by the Rudis a true liberation, or was it a more complicated, even tragic, state of being a free gladiator was still marked by his past, his scars, his fame, and his legal status as a former infamies would follow him. He might be free from the law but was he ever truly free from the arena? Some scholars argue that the rudies was a golden cage. It granted legal freedom, but left the man psychologically and socially trapped in the world of the games. Others see it as a genuine chance at a new life, a testament to the possibility of social mobility even for a slave, a powerful piece of Roman propaganda demonstrating that even the lowest could achieve the highest reward through valor. For you, sitting in the barracks, listening to these stories, the debate is purely academic. The rudies is a symbol of an almost impossible future. You have fought once and lost. The path to freedom seems infinitely long. It would take years of survival, a string of improbable victories against terrifying opponents, and the fickle favor of the crowds and the politicians who sponsored the games. You look at the veteran gladiators around you. Some have been here for 5, even 10 years. They have dozens of fights under their belts. They are the heroes of your small world, the primi poli of the ludus. Yet none of them have been granted the rudies. They are too valuable as they are. A top-earning gladiator was a golden goose for his laniste. Why would the owner willingly give up such a profitable asset? He would likely use all his influence to prevent his star from being granted freedom. The dream of the rudies is therefore a beautiful and cruel paradox. To have a chance at receiving it, you have to become such an incredible, successful, and popular fighter that you become too valuable to set free. It is a prize that recedes the closer you get to deserving it. Still, you allow yourself to dream. You picture it, standing in the center of the arena, not beaten and broken, but victorious, the editor smiling, the crowd chanting your name. Aim approaches and hands you not a palm branch, but a simple wooden sword. You take it, you hold it up, the roar is deafening, and then you turn and walk away, leaving the blood and the sand behind you forever. It's a fantasy, a foolish, childish fantasy, but in the dead of night, when the fear and the loneliness are at their worst, it's the one thing that keeps your spirit from breaking entirely. It is the hope of a life beyond the fight. Years pass, the seasons turn outside the high walls of the ludus, but inside, time is measured differently. It's measured in scars, in fights survived, in the faces of new TIR ones who arrive with the same terrified look you once had. You are no longer the novice, you are the veteran. Your body is a roadmap of your career, a canvas of knotted scar tissue. the broken arm from your training days, the long, puckered line on your leg from Festus's sword in your first match, a dozen other smaller marks from glancing blows and near misses. Each one is a memory, a lesson. You have fought more times than you can count. 10, 15, 20, the numbers begin to blur. You fought in the grand amphitheaters of provincial capitals and in dusty, makeshift arenas in backwater towns. You fought against Tim, you are Millans and Hoplomakai. You've even fought in chaotic team battles, the Greg A. Tim, where the only goal was to be on the last team standing. You have won. You have lost. You have been spared by the crowd. You have stood over a defeated opponent and waited for the editor's signal, sometimes delivering the final blow, other times letting him live. Your name, Donner the Thracian, is known. You have your own small following. You hear the cheers when you enter the Pampa. You've earned the respect of your fellow gladiators, and the grudging approval of your lawn is stay. You are a success. You are a survivor, but you are not free. The Rudy's remains a distant, shimmering dream. You have become too reliable, too profitable. You are a permanent fixture in the games. This long, grinding career is the ultimate fate of the successful gladiator, not the superstar who burns brightly and dies young, nor the loser who vanishes after a few fights. It's the life of a professional, the man who has learned to kill, to survive, and to endure. This is the grim reality behind the myth. The life expectancy of a gladiator was brutally short, a well-established historical fact, while a few, like you, might survive into their late 20 seconds or even early 30 seconds. They were the statistical outliers. The vast majority ended up in a burial pit or a common grave long before they reached that point. The system was designed to churn through bodies. One day, you face a new opponent. He is young, strong, and fast. He reminds you of yourself all those years ago. He is a ready Arias, a net fighter. He is all speed and agility, armed with his trident and net. You are older now, slower. Your strength is still there, but the explosive speed of your youth has faded. You rely on experience, on cunning, on reading your opponent's intentions. The fight is long and grueling. He is quick, constantly dancing just out of your reach, flicking his net, forcing you to stay on guard. The crowd loves the matchup, the classic contest of the heavily armed veteran against the nimble young challenger. You are tired. The greaves on your legs feel like they are made of lead. Your shield arm trembles with fatigue. He makes his move. He casts his net with a practiced flick of the wrist. You faced this attack a dozen times before. You try to sidestep, to bat it away with your sword, but you are a fraction of a second too slow. The weighted cords of the net fly true, settling over your head and shoulders, entangling your sword arm. You are trapped. He is on you in an instant, his trident leveled. You struggle against the net, but it only tightens. He is too fast. He thrusts the trident forward. You don't feel the pain. Not at first, just a stunning, powerful impact in your chest. The force of it knocks you off your feet. You fall backward onto the sand, the sky spinning above you. You look down and see the three prongs of the trident embedded deep in your chest. The world begins to fade to a soft, gray blur at the edges. And here is the final, small detail of a gladiator's and the burial. If you were a member of a collegium, a burial society formed with your fellow fighters, you might be lucky. Your comrades would claim your body, give it a proper funeral, and place a simple stone marker over your grave. These tombstones are our primary source of information for the lives of individual gladiators, often listing their name, type, number of fights, and age. To Flamme, the sacred, or lived 30 years, fought 34 times. They are a poignant, final record of a brutal life. But if you had no such connections, your end would be unceremonious. Your body would be dragged out through the portal ibit in Insus, the gate of the dead, and dumped into a common pit with the other casualties of the day. Your life flashes before you, but not in a grand montage. You see fleeting images. The sun on the fields of your homeland, the face of the first man you killed, the taste of wine at your one and only scenally bara, the feeling of the veteran's hand on your shoulder after you survived your first fight. The roar of the crowd fades to a distant murmur. Like the sea, the young Ready Arias stands over you, his face a mixture of triumph and shock. The costumed figures of Karen and Mercury are approaching from the edge of your vision. You are no longer Donner the Thracian, the veteran, the survivor. You are just a man, lying in the sand, your life seeping away to stain it a darker shade of red. Your journey is over. This is the final gristle for almost every gladiator. Not the glorious freedom of the Rudis, but the cold, quiet finality of the sand. And so, the roar of the crowd finally fades away. The sharp edges of the day begin to soften and blur, like a watercolor painting left out in a gentle rain. The heat of the sun on the sand gives way to a cool, comforting stillness. The weight of the helmet, the shield, the years, it all just lifts away, as light as a feather drifting on a quiet evening breeze. There is no more training to be done, no more bells to answer. The fear that lived for so long in the pit of your stomach has uncoiled and drifted away, like smoke from a dying campfire. Your breath is slow and even now, the gentle tide rising and falling in a deep, dreamless ocean of peace. The story is over, the struggle is done. You can feel yourself floating now, drifting on a soft, quiet current, leaving the stone walls and the shouting voices far, far behind. There is only a deep, profound silence, a gentle, velvety darkness. It is the kind of quiet that allows for true rest, the kind of rest you have earned 1,000 times over. Let the current carry you. There is nowhere else you need to be. Just rest now. Just sleep. The end of the article. Good night.